Good evening, everyone. It is getting lighter a little earlier in the morning and a little later at night, believe it or not. So I'll call the meeting to order right at 6:30. First item on the agenda, are there any additions or deletions to the agenda or any changes? No, I think, except on item 6 where we're going over all the budgets, a last little bullet point is we'll just do a very quick update on wastewater, the wastewater bond vote, just to touch base on it a little bit. And then the last item is a possible executive session, but we don't at this point have any reason to utilize that. Do we have any public comment for something that's not on the agenda? Yes.
I just wanted to...
And who are you, please?
Andrea. I wanted to acknowledge that I know that the town website was down, so people weren't getting mail and emails and things weren't posted on the town website. And I really appreciate the effort that's made to get the agenda and the meeting packet up there, and hope that it can happen regularly and in a timely basis, so that people have a chance to read the materials.
Okay, I think there was maybe 2 days, a day and a half, where it was down.
From Saturday till Monday, late Monday at some point was the email.
I just thought my dream came true with no email.
Right.
You know?
And it was a Green Mountain,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and is it okay now, or?
They tell me it is, and it looks like, it appears to be working now, so.
So it was
Okay.
a town-wide issue, it wasn't just the town's website, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it was
it's
the
the
email.
email.
Town
Yeah.
email, yeah.
But just so you're aware, they are doing some work tonight, and they're not 100% sure that work will not affect
Right.
the
Okay.
email.
So
All
we
right.
never recaptured any of our emails, so if anyone sent us something, please resend your email.
Yeah, I'm told all
We've
that's
lost
lost and
all of
gone.
it, yeah.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay.
Anything that came during that period of time. was-
Right.
oh,
Check
interesting. Okay, all right, thanks, Andrea. Any other comments? All right, first item on the agenda, it's outlined as a review of conflict of interest policy, and we've invited the planning commission here, and it's the whole planning commission? Yeah? No? Not quite?
Dennis and Rolf are
Okay,
absent.
Rolf, yeah, and Dennis, okay. And,
6 out of 8. One vacancy.
okay. I just gotta write myself a note. So we saw this really as an education opportunity for everybody. We have a conflict of interest policy that was in our packet. Also supporting this item was our policy on committee appointments. And we really see this as an opportunity, an educational opportunity, so not only the select board or the planning commission, but all of our boards should be pretty aware of the policy on conflict of interest, and then also having a chance to look at our policy on appointing boards and commissions and committees, an opportunity, there's some corrections we could be making to that policy too. So hopefully everybody got a chance to review those. And I think, Maggie, you've talked as a board, or you sent a memo that was also in our packet.
And I copied the planning commission
okay.
members on that.
So there's also a supporting memo on that. And so I guess the first thing, I just ask the board or the planning commission or any audience members, just any comments on the supporting documents, I guess, on the policies. Let's say with the conflict of interest policy.
I guess I'll go because I was kind of the one that mentioned it a couple of meetings ago. This kind of is a kind of a funny meeting because it all stems from the appointments we were gonna make. And I don't think anybody should feel targeted by that. It was just a matter of the circumstance of the timing. It's a broader conversation that I feel like I needed to bring up because of the correlation between members of the Planning Commission also being members or having ties to Responsible Growth Hinesburg at the time the new zoning rules were proposed, specifically the official map. I felt, as others did, who poked and prodded me a little bit about that very question. How can people be how can they be making recommendations from this seat when they're associated with this? So I guess that's the question that I want to ask of the Planning Commission tonight, how that kind of slipped through the cracks. Because through my lens, it seemed like there was a clear conflict with some of the members. And I guess I would just like to see that addressed.
Any other comments? Yep, Bill?
Bill Marks. Well, I have a question in response to you, Tom, and I did watch the VCAM last meeting, so I know what everyone said. And I thought you were pretty clear, and you pretty much echoed it, but I just want to make sure I understand that you do have a problem with somebody on the Planning Commission being associated in some way with RGH. As having, and being on the Planning Commission as having a conflict of interest. Is that not what you're...
Only when it comes to certain properties, not in general. I mean, in general, any member of the community is going to think about anything the way they wish. But when it comes to certain decisions within that scope, I mean, Phil has recused himself from this board several times. Andrea did when she sat on the board. I believe Michael Bissonette has. So it's only on certain issues. And I thought that Lot 15, or the Hannaford lot, was one where those members who had ties with both should have recused themselves.
And you're referring specifically to the decision to designate part of Lot 15 as a future park, I think. Is that really the crux of it?
Whatever the decision was, or wasn't, I think they should have recused themselves from making any decision with regard to Lot 15.
Okay, and Aaron, do you feel the same way?
Are you asking me because of seconding the motion that he made
No, I'm
during
just
the?
asking because it wasn't clear from the previous meeting whether you shared that concern, and
I was making sure that a board member's opinion and motion was recognized and the process moved forward at that meeting.
well, then that's not my question.
No, but I'm answering it as to what was going on.
All right, but my question is simply yes or no. Do you, because of any of the Planning Commission's association with RGH, does that give you a problem with their participation on the Planning Commission? And I guess it's regard to, at least as far as what Tom's concern is regarding decisions relating to Lot 15.
I think Tom nailed it when he said that if you have a specific connection to a decision or discussion, and the examples he gave of Phil and Andrea and Mike all stepping back from a conversation, heck, we had that, I think, a meeting or two ago, that would be appropriate to step back from that conversation.
Okay, do you think there was such a specific connection in this case with the members, with Barb and John on the, participating in the official map?
Yeah, that's what the Planning Commission sent to us. I'm reading, I didn't attend those meetings, so I don't know. But I saw what they sent us, of course. That was in our public hearing last time.
I'm just gonna, so I think it's important that we steer ourselves back to what the policy is too.
Okay.
So, but go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to take an This opportunity this evening was not intended to get us into the weeds or get into a controversial conversation. This is just another sort of teachable moment, another opportunity to talk about the conflict of interest. We're a small community. You're always going to be on any board or committee. You're going to be either talking about or making decisions on maybe a neighbor or a friend or a church that you go to or any business. And so this is not just the Planning Commission. This is for the DRB. This is for the Select Board. This is for everyone, just to kind of keep that in mind and keep the conflict of interest policy fresh in your minds, just like you would the open meeting law. So it's not a finger pointing time. This is just, here, let's start with the Planning Commission. Here's something that was brought up. Whether it's a perceived conflict of interest and let's talk about that. I mean, when you have challenging conversations, that's the time that people learn and really capture it. So I think this is not intended to be a negative thing. It's not intended to be a finger pointing, he said, she said. It's just, let's use this opportunity and start the conversation. So, there you go.
And I'll sort of steer us back too, I think. And in this case, I don't necessarily agree directly with Tom. And I sort of go to the policy and I look at the policy and I read the in it that, you have to have a personal benefit. Maybe it's monetary or something very similar. I could see where Tom would think, somebody who's on that committee in particular, will benefit in some way by, moving their agenda forward or something. So I can understand you might get that. When I look at it, I don't quite make that connection. And the times I have recused myself is when I thought it would really appear that way, sometimes associated with church items that, are focused with the town, or other things with the business I work for. And so, I recuse myself because I think there's that real direct connection. So, and so I tend to fall back on the policy too. Go ahead, Maggie.
So maybe sort of a two-part answer to address Tom's point. So I had a great phone call with Barbara Senning, who's one of the attorneys at VLCT, and Barbara, Susan. Sorry. Yeah. She talked about the process that every board should go through to first the member who may have a real or perceived conflict of interest discloses what that would be in a meeting in public, and then the group as a whole discusses whether or not a conflict may exist, and then the board member deliberates as to whether he or she should recuse themselves, and then decides whether or not to recuse themselves. And all of that is open and documented. And so that's the process. And Alex just told me before the meeting, because I didn't have the time or the energy to go find it, but that there was a discussion in 2018 on recusal. And you have the minutes, or
Yeah,
is that the date?
just to clarify,
In the planning, at a planning commission meeting?
yeah,
Okay.
so the most recent discussion that Tom was referencing was decisions about making revisions to the official map and forwarding those to your board to review. And that's what you had your hearing on December 4th, and some concerns were raised on this question at that meeting. My recollection is that the Planning Commission did not have a discussion as a part of that conversation about conflict of interest. But the prior year, in 2018, the Planning Commission discussed and made recommendations to the DRB while the Hannaford project was actively being reviewed. And their feedback to the DRB was similar to what they had provided in 2011, that the project didn't comply with the official map and the DRB should deny it. So in May of 2018, the Planning Commission had that conversation again, because Hannaford was back in front of the DRB for their second go-around. And it was at that meeting that this issue did come up. Specifically with regard to John, Marie actually raised the issue, and there was a conversation that's in the minutes about whether there's a real conflict of interest or a perceived conflict of interest, and whether John felt he could be impartial and participate in the discussion with the best interests of the town in mind. And so, yeah, that's the open discussion that happened. It didn't happen in relation to the most recent official map revision. But just to editorialize a little bit, it didn't need to for that, because that official map revision that you're weighing right now has no connection and never could have any connection to the Hannaford project that Responsible Growth Hinesburg is invested in. That official map decision is, relates to any future development on the property, and we all knew that when that discussion was being had. So I don't know that it really warranted more conflict of interest discussion, although there may have been some perception in the community that that was an issue. I don't know that any of us thought it would be, because it didn't bear on the Hannaford project in any way.
Can I just make a quick comment? Because I
Sure.
was part of the planning commission all the times that Alex were talking about.
That's right, you're in the minutes.
Yeah, and I know, last meeting I raised it because I know it's come up a couple of times, and I just wanted to talk it through and get it out and let it go. In my opinion, it's more of a perceived conflict of interest than the actual policy. I believe, and you can keep me honest here, Alex, Lot 15 and that designation, the official map, I believe was there before Hannaford applied, right?
Correct.
So that was something that was done long before Hannaford showed up and long before R.G. Etchers of it. That was there by the Planning Commission. So jump forward a little bit to Alex's point. I don't know what benefit would have been had, and my concern is, can you not serve on a board just because you're a member of a group? So for example, should I recuse myself tonight because we're talking about the Planning Commission that I used to be a part of? Right?
That's not.
That's not.
But I do understand where you're coming from, but I just think you're going to have people that have opinions. You're going to have people that belong to groups, and they bring that foresight into the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission debates it, or the DRB debates it, and it comes up to this board and we debate it. And I'm concerned about, because you're a member of a group, and I get there was the lawsuit and all of that, but the conversation had no bearing on that project. It was there before that project came into town. We were discussing it, and it would be applicable to anything after if that project went forward or didn't go forward. So that's where I get the perception, but I don't think it was there. And that's just my opinion. But I did want to raise it because you had the concern, and I just wanted to get it out there and get it opened and closed, because I don't like things floating around. I'd rather just address them.
Well, I have the concern also because I'm echoing what I hear in the community here at this board. And it was obvious to me that a lot of people were wondering what's going on here. So, I mean, it does mention perceived conflict of interest in the policy.
Right.
So it's my goal with this conversation is just to make sure that everybody realizes that sits on any board that conflict of interest is a real issue. Whether it's perceived or real, it needs to be addressed before these conversations are had. I mean, I don't come in here with an axe to grind, but I think we put these policies in place for a reason, and we need to support them.
So what you're saying is you're not trying to prevent somebody from being reappointed, but merely just trying to have this conversation.
Right. Have the conversation. I want to make sure that everybody, if I'm thinking there's a conflict of interest, I mean, and the reason I thought there was is because I clearly heard through the 3 million conversations we had about Lot 15 that the community wanted Lot 15 to remain as commercial space. And I must admit that I was a little shocked when it came back from the Planning Commission in their most recent proposal that it was still a dot on the official map. I felt like either the people in the community weren't heard or there was a conflict of some kind. So that's why I brought it up.
Okay. Yeah. Peter?
I think that you should bear in mind that there is not really a hierarchy, but there are very different committees and boards. The Planning Commission is not a decision-making board, it's a recommendation-making board. So that a conflict there, while you may feel very strongly and make a recommendation, it is different than the select board or the DRB, because that's really where the buck stops. And the planning commission, you guys have another whack at it. And I'm not saying you should just ignore the conflict policy, but you just have to remember that it isn't a decision-making board.
So you're correct in that, Peter. So the DRB and the select board can serve as quasi-judicial boards. And so that's when it is very important to disclose that and to recuse yourself. But it is also a conversation that's important for all of the boards. I mean, I have, this conflict of interest policy is a model policy from VLCT. I did talk about it. It's best practice just to have these conversations and have them on a more regular basis. So that's it.
John?
John Kadash, just to go back for a moment about what Alex was describing when a decision was made at the Planning Commission to, as I recall, resend a letter that we had sent earlier to the DRB. And Marie had a concern about my being part of that discussion and decision. And we talked about it at that meeting. And if I recall right, I recused myself. In fact, Dennis and I both left the room because of his participation as a member of the DRB. He stepped out also. So, and there has not, and I understand that the policy says that the individual, if they are concerned about a conflict, need to bring that forward and discuss it. That policy also says an alternate is if someone else questions that, it can be discussed. And that's what Marie did, and we did talk about it. And am I right? Did I not recuse myself?
Yeah.
I don't think you did, actually, John.
I don't think you wanted to, John.
I
but
didn't want to.
Interestingly enough,
Yeah, go ahead.
Interestingly enough, Jim Dumont was in the audience, and everybody kind of looked at him, and my recollection is he said, yes, John probably should recuse himself. So at that point, John did. And since I'm speaking, the one thing I want to say, I like everything that I've heard tonight, is I think that every time, or maybe once a year, this stuff should be brought up.
Absolutely.
Because I really think a lot of people don't truly understand what the policy says. And I think that Tom raises a good point. Because I felt that John did have a conflict of interest because he was involved, his wife was involved in the lawsuit. And then afterwards, I found out that he also was involved in the lawsuit. To me, that was a conflict of interest, and it was in his best interest also, not just the board, for himself to recuse himself, which he did do in the end. You're right, John, you did.
Yeah.
So that's the story of what happened the time we discussed it. And we hadn't discussed it since, but I think once a year, it's a really good idea for boards to talk about that.
Weigh in on that. I mean,
Yes,
I think keep
absolutely.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, just like the open meeting law
Right.
Conversations, the conflict of interest, I think it's sort of as a reorganizational meeting, you could have that added to the thing and just pick one time a year where this is something you do. And then you can bring it up if there's situations that happen, then obviously then it becomes a conversation. But just, and as new board members come in and, on the boards, give them sort of a packet, talk about the conflict of interest policy, talk about the open meeting law, and those type of things. Just, use this as an opportunity.
Right,
It's
exactly.
a good thing.
And I think it's a good opportunity, and maybe Jeff or Mary Lee, when we had this discussion at the last meeting, and we started talking about appointments, I'm like, well, we have a policy on appointments. I don't know where it is, I haven't looked at it in a long time, but we have one, and we should be, it should be closer than we have one somewhere.
We do have-
So
it's-
all
it's
of
in
these,
there.
yeah,
it's in
it's,
the
yeah.
packet.
We just need to change the dates on
So,
it. because
go ahead, Mary Lee.
So I just want to add to what Marie said. I think it is really important, and as it says in the conflict of interest policy, and I believe it also says in our appointment policy, the reason it's so important is for trust. that people in the town trust that the people on these boards and commissions are working in the best interests of the town. And I think we can't talk about that enough and remind ourselves. And if somebody has a question, then it should be brought out in the open and discussed. I personally trust that everybody who's working so hard on these committees is doing it for the best interests of the town as they see it. But it's important that everybody in the town feels that way.
Catherine Goldsmith. I wonder if anyone's willing to speak to this idea of personal gain, because that's pretty fuzzy. And I think that anyone who lives in the town and cares about the town, as we all do, has their vision of what's best for the town and has pet projects they'd like to see enacted. But I don't see those things really as personal gain. I see those as personal opinions about direction the town should take, and they differ. Sometimes they differ radically. But I don't see those as whether those things come to pass or not as being personal gain unless there's personal gain. You know, the idea that we might have, I don't know, a swimming pool someday in town. I might like that idea, I might not. If it happens, it doesn't benefit me personally. Other than having a swimming pool in Williston that I can drive to benefits me personally. I don't see that, so I wonder if anyone would like to speak to that piece of it.
It is pretty clear in the policy. So if the town decided to have a swimming pool in your front yard, then that would be a personal gain for you. But if we decided to have a swimming pool at CVU and you're a swimmer and you really want that to happen, you'd have a personal gain in that, but so would lots of other people. So the personal gain happens when it's you alone that has it, not a whole.
More than the general public.
Exactly.
I mean, I think, like any other policy, there is some gray area. So I think, Tom's discussion, I mean, it's a gray area. When is it a personal gain? Do you have to have money cross your palm? I wouldn't think so. So it's difficult. And, the policy's written around those terms, but it also talks about perceived, conflict of interest too. So that waters it down, I think, a little bit, in my opinion. I'm going to just go to people who haven't talked yet. Bob?
I think what Peter said is important, and I think what Catherine said is really important. There's a question of vision, and to have a vision for the town, I think is very different than a conflict of interest. You could say that, and I'm just seconding what's been said, that a conflict of interest may involve a disparity of vision. And to shut someone up or to say they can't be on a commission because their vision differs from your vision, I think we're getting into some really slippery areas here, and we have to be very careful. So I can see where if someone's involved in a lawsuit, that's a whole other issue. If someone is going to benefit monetarily from a decision, maybe they do need to recuse themselves from a board that is attempting to move that.
Would, in that case, they would,
yes.
recuse themselves.
Those are obvious. Vision is not so obvious.
Right.
But when we start crossing that line between my vision is different from you, so I'm questioning whether you ought to be on a particular board and influence that board in moving forward your own vision. This is politics. We see that all the time carried out in any number of ways. Of course, we don't have Republican and Democrats on the select board, but I could probably point out, that some people on the select board lean a particular way and others lean another way, because it's obvious, having watched so many select board meetings, that people vote in a certain way and others don't. So does that mean that they that they can't try to forward their vision through persuasion. See, so this is really a slippery slope. That's all I can say. And I hope that we don't disallow people who are serving on these boards in a wonderful way to you know, have to not serve on those boards. And I just think it's so important that we pay attention to that. So, also, I just want to say that there is an assumption that those people who oppose RGH and all that went on with Lot 15 are in the majority. But I venture to say that they're not in the majority, and that there are probably 50%, maybe more, of the people in this town that did not want to see Lot 15 developed in
All right,
that way.
I'm gonna
So
stop
I'm just
there,
gonna-
because that's a
okay.
whole nother issue.
That's a whole nother issue.
And I'm
but-
not gonna even go close to that. I'm just gonna stay with this conflict of interest policy and continue that discussion.
But can I say, I'm challenging Tom's assumption that he represents more people than, say, people on
And I'm
RGH
telling you to
represent.
stop.
Okay.
All right, thanks. Because I want to talk really about this. And I think what I'm hearing is you're accusing Tom of being, you know, using his opinion in a certain way, and you're doing the same, in my opinion. Okay, so I will stop there. Go ahead, John.
This is something that I'm personally dealing with, obviously. What does one do when someone that you're married to is involved in a citizens group outside the government, acting on an issue that's important to the entire town? What is someone in my position supposed to do to not be accused of a conflict of interest? I live with this person. It's been 9 years plus.
Yeah, I mean, I would think-
What, I'm asking as anybody in my situation.
Right.
What do we do?
I would suggest what we're talking about is to bring it out in the open. And, you know, during a deliberation, you know, you could bring that out. That says, hey, this could, you know, I could be looked at as being in a situation where there may be a conflict of interest. Here's the situation, and ask others on the board, you know. And by putting it out there, then the perception is, I think, reduced. So not saying anything. So what we're trying to say is the more we talk about this, the more we get it out in the open, the better off it is for everybody. That's what I
I don't
see.
disagree with that at all. I think that's important, definitely important.
So I can just one thing real quick on kind of what John said and what I was saying. I think it kind of melds a little bit. I think the concern was, there's a lawsuit going on, right? All of that stuff. There's a perception that there's a conflict of interest, right? Totally with that. I get it. But then when you look at it, there was no gain to be had because whatever decision came didn't impact that lawsuit, didn't impact that stuff. That's all I'm saying. But I agree with you. It should come up and it should be discussed. And I think we did that at the Planning Commission that time. We went through it and went around and talked about it and decisions were made. So where do you draw the line? Is it more the perception side? Is it more the reality side? I don't know. But I think talking about it is the main thing. So.
Go ahead.
I'll try to refill, but.
This is where I usually say, Mark, go ahead.
You were gonna say that.
But I didn't this time,
Did you
okay.
say that?
No,
I was thinking that.
Well, as you know, I was through the ringer on this a couple of years ago with the select board, and decided that there was not a conflict of issue for me. But I did my homework on it, and I learned a lot about it. Most of which I more or less knew all along, but I think in addition to the policy, I think we also have the guidelines which we can refer to. And I think they make it very clear, as other conflict of issue laws also do, that it has to deal, as been said, primarily by others, that it has to be personal. It has to be special to the individual, the gain. It has to be essentially unique. And it gives an example of voting to lower taxes, which may benefit you. It may benefit another group, but that doesn't make it a conflict of interest. So this whole distinction between, oh, and by the way, I'm thinking, I'm not sure if I understood Renee properly, but if she said that the Planning Commission is also a quasi-judicial, but, oh, okay, good, because it's not.
No, it's not.
The DRB is, I think.
Yes.
But I don't think at this level that there's really much of a distinction between the appearance of conflict and actual conflict, because the facts are usually pretty out there and simple. But in order to have a genuine appearance of conflict of interest, it has to be the appearance of a personal conflict, not a disagreement on what's the benefit. There has to be some appearance that somebody is benefiting privately, either financially or it could be in community esteem. For example, if I discovered John Kadash had actually a right of first refusal on lot 15, but he said, oh, don't worry, I'm going to give it to the town. I just would like them to build a soccer field there, and if they name it after me, great. That would be a conflict of interest, even if he didn't benefit. But so this whole thing about gray area of appearance, I think, makes it more complicated than it is. The appearance has to be based on a personal specific.
Mary Beth Bowman, when I think perceived, I mean, does that mean two people perceive it? Does it mean, perceived? I mean, that could be three people saying, it makes me nervous. So perceived, I question the word perceived. How many people does it take to perceive? Is it 20, 40? Two. So, and I go, because I talked about this before about conflicts of interest, and there's that personal gain. If there's no personal gain, if you're on, obviously I've been on RGH. If I were on a committee, what gain would I get saying, no, this should not happen, and I bring out my opinion? There's no gain in that. That's it. It's just, thank you.
I think it's just important for all boards and committees to come in with an open mind. So everyone has feelings or opinions of what they believe in, but when you're on a board or commission, you sort of put that aside to a point when you're listening. And so you're listening to other perspectives, because Hinesburg isn't made up of one set mind, point of view, and nor is any other community. And so the purpose of the boards and committees are to think about, from what's in the best interest of the town. And I think everyone has that intention, and everybody does a wonderful job. You guys donate a lot of your time. It's just, this is a good conversation to have, and just a reminder, because we all have a conflict in some way. We all care really deeply about something in our communities. But it's just important to sometimes sit back and listen too, and then maybe you can hear a different perspective and like, okay, so I think that's more of what it is.
And I do think there's an attempt by the select board, who does the appointing, to appoint what I'll say balanced, views on committees.
And reappoint.
So, it is what we try to do, I think. And I do see regularly, and I think I try to do it myself, to sort of be open-minded, and just because if the town was run only by me, it would look a lot different than it is today. So, and fortunate for everybody, that's not how it's done. So it is a balanced view and a balanced approach, and therefore benefits
Yeah.
everybody the most. So, go ahead, Alex.
I just want to make sure that the factual record is clear, because I think something came out of my mouth that wasn't true with regard to John. So, again, I don't recall the Planning Commission talking about conflict of interest with regard to the official map revision that was forwarded to you in 2019. And as I said, there couldn't have been a conflict because that official map revision could have no bearing on the Hannaford case, RGH's interests, anything. In my mind. But there was a discussion about conflict of interest in 2018 when the Planning Commission was going to give feedback to the DRB during the Hannaford review. And so, just to clarify the record again, on May 9th of 2018, the Planning Commission had a discussion about that. Marie brought it up, was concerned about John, a potential conflict of interest by John. It was discussed, and I think where I misspoke, and John corrected it, was that later, after the discussion on June 13th, the commission talked about it again and voted to send feedback to the DRB, and John is accurate. He and Dennis left the room and did not participate in that vote or that discussion at that meeting. So John did recuse himself from that discussion, and I just want that noted,
Okay.
because that's how it's portrayed in the minutes.
And
Go ahead.
honestly, I want to say that everything that we're talking about tonight, what happened, which Alex hasn't, things worked the way they were supposed to.
Yes.
You know, it was okay for me to say, I think you might have a conflict, John. And then we worked it out. I mean, I think it worked perfectly. So if everybody's worried about, personal gain, that wasn't what I meant at all when I raised it. It was just the perception. And I truly think that we worked it out well.
And I think you could argue that the decision that was made, whatever was made, that was forwarded to the DRB, had more strength in it than it may have the other way around.
Because we talked
More,
about it.
yeah, validity.
So.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I just wanted to say something, Dan Meyer. I'm somewhat still new to the Planning Commission, and this conflict of interest conversation is new to me. I haven't been a part of a discussion since I've been on the board, so it's been really great learning experience for me. I can tell a lot of these conversations go way back, and there's a lot of information that I'm just not aware of. So I apologize if maybe some of my questions here are a little bit simple, but if I don't quite understand them, maybe people that are listening or that are going to watch this and that don't know all that entire history, maybe they won't quite understand it as well. But for me, listening to everybody's conversations here, it seems like, it's one thing to be a part of a group, to have that group have an opinion. Everybody has opinions. I think that's what makes being on a board, for me anyway, really exciting, to be able to hear everybody's opinions. There's conversations about personal gain, whatever it might be, but it seems like in this situation here, and correct me if I'm wrong, specifically what the potential perceived or personal conflict of interest was with this group. There was a lawsuit, and that lawsuit, I guess, was with the Hannaford's project, and I'm assuming that involves money, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong, but then also, does that money also tie back to the town? Like, to me, that's where I feel like if we're talking about personal gain, if there's money involved, then that's where, yes, maybe some conflict of interest could be associated there, but I don't know. I mean, would one of you guys be able to clear that up for me, like to help better understand, what this lawsuit was and how this group was associated with that lawsuit and how members of that group could benefit or not benefit from that lawsuit, and how that impacted the town? Because to me, that seems like that is what the real question was.
Yeah, that's a big topic. I'm not sure we can get into it. But, I mean, I could argue that people with responsible growth of Hinesburg were raising funds and using their own funds to do this. And by changing policies in the town that might help their lawsuit, then maybe they're not going to have to spend or raise as many funds. You know, I guess you could make that argument. I'm not making it. I'm just sort of, I don't know that I want to try to get into that whole, because it's pretty deep. So, but I would encourage you to talk to anybody on the planning commission and sort of get the history behind it if you want, unless somebody else wants to jump into that. And go ahead, Peter.
Just a quick question, is there in any of the policies sort of clarity about what recusal really is? Do you
yeah.
read the rules? Because I remember planning commission meetings, 20 years ago, where recusal was push yourself back 1 inch more from everybody else at the table. And still stay in the discussion.
I mean, the policy, I think, is there, and it says, and the case for myself is I get away from the board and I go sit in the audience, but that doesn't mean I can't say anything. I can say something as a town member. Yeah. So I don't know that you necessarily have to leave the room.
No, I'm not saying
but there
that,
might be a
but it
time
just
when you
seems like
might.
There should be a clear physical separation from the board.
Go ahead, Tom.
So I'm pretty well satisfied with the conversation that we've had tonight. I'm glad Marie and Dan and John were able to get things hashed out. So I'm happy to end the conversation and make a motion if it's fine with you.
Yeah, and I don't want to stop the conversation, but I'll add one more thing that I'm sure Renee is okay that we're going to come out of this with an action that says, let's put together a little packet for every board member who, gets appointed, or point them to the website or something that says, here's 2 or 3 or 4 policies. You need to read them. We could be asking people when we appoint, have you read the policies? And ask each board once a year to at least have that discussion and to make sure that we do this much better.
So Phil?
Can I support that by saying the state actually provides documents that describe conflict of interest, appointments to boards, what a planning commission member is responsible for. And I read all of that. I don't remember whether you guys handed it to me or whether I found it on the website, but I went through all of that set of documents, and maybe some specific examples for our town would be helpful.
Yeah.
But I just assumed this is what everybody who gets appointed to this position does. They read these rules and regs.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a good thing.
So I found the part that answers Peter's question about recusal. It's in the conflict of interest policy, Article 9, post-recusal procedure. A public officer who has recused himself or herself from serving on a public body in a particular proceeding shall not sit with that public body, deliberate with that public body, or participate in that proceeding as a member of the public body in any capacity, though such a member may still participate as a member of the public.
Yeah. All right. Did you want to?
So I'm happy to, I know this is an appointment as opposed to a reappointment now, or can we just say reappointment?
Yeah, I mean, technically it's an appointment just because
Well,
the
just
term,
because I don't know
but
what
that's
the-
just semantics.
Just because I
Yeah.
don't know what the dates are, I'm gonna say I would move to appoint James Donegan, Barb Ferrauer, and John Kadash to their respective seats on the planning commission
For the terms that were noted
for
in
the
the.
terms noted in the previous packet.
I'll second that.
Good with that?
Yep.
All right. Any more discussion? This was very good. All right.
Just, I would add that I really appreciate the efforts because I sat on that commission, as you did too, I think. And Jeff? I don't know, did you? No. It's not particularly easy. It's a lot of thinky stuff and it takes a lot of time. The meetings are easy, it's the homework. It's a lot. Yeah, thinky stuff.
It's a new
Thinky
term.
stuff.
Stepping stone.
Yeah. It's outside the meetings is where like a lot of the heavy lifting comes, and I hope so. Anyway, I just wanted to say I appreciate it because it's a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work.
Well, thanks, guys. We're gonna get back and do some technical stuff.
Can everyone
Well, hold on,
please
hold
make
on.
sure they sign in?
We haven't actually voted yet.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye? Okay, so you got that? All right,
Thank you all.
thank you.
We're done now, James.
Yes, they just voted.
Yeah, yeah.
Still on the board, James.
You're on the show.
I was gonna say no to James, he talks too much.
It was.
So we can work on that. I mean, I think as we appoint,
Yeah, I mean,
we
there
can.
are,
Yeah.
like the planning commission has a packet that they've gotten in the
Yeah.
past and things, so yeah.
Yeah.
We can certainly do a
Okay.
generic one.
I think it's a good, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely, just a welcome packet.
Yeah.
to just have a little brush up,
Absolutely.
kind of reorganizational meeting
Yeah.
like we do.
Absolutely.
I mean, I enjoyed going through this carefully and reading it, and same
Yeah.
with the appointment thing.
Yeah.
So it was
And you
good.
pointed out there's a difference in dates.
Yeah.
Yes, because that's how, I think when we adopted this originally, like in 12 or 13, they started out with those dates, but then they quickly realized that wasn't, it was better to end them at the end of the year and
Okay,
have the
so
term start at the
somebody
beginning.
will
So
change that
yeah,
on the
I'll go
website.
back and change. There's
You got
quite
a
a few
nice
things
shout out on the
actually.
news today.
We did.
Oh, yeah?
Was it
Oh,
yesterday?
really?
I missed it.
The car that, yeah.
Oh.
Was it yesterday?
Iroquois.
Oh, the Iroquois.
Town does a good job of the roads,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
this person was just driving.
Yes.
to get in the bad mouth us.
Yeah.
Still, I-
Well, of course, that's what they do.
When someone's
Perhaps.
applying for a position, have them have read it and it can be
Yeah.
brought up at that point. That
Yeah.
gets it right at the
Yeah.
beginning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. All right, next item on the agenda, thanks for that. Consider approving the funds for the repair of the Hinesburg Hollow and Tyler Bridge Road. We have a couple pictures. I actually went and looked at it, I don't know, a while ago. I think the last time we had the meeting, it got brought up, but I don't think anybody on the board was aware that we had that damage or that extent of damage.
Talked about it, we just hadn't.
Heard
Yeah.
about it, but
Yeah,
didn't see pictures, yeah.
And the pictures are helpful, and I think it's fair to say the reason it's coming to the select board is because of the size of the need. I mean, if it was,
It's the monetary value.
monetary value, if it was whatever, I forget, 5,000, if it was
I think it's only like
4,999,
3,000, 2,000 that I can do.
it would be done already, probably, so. And you went out and got a couple of quotes, which we have here. And the two, I think, Parent and, I don't know, Driscoll, you've worked with both, yeah, and they oversee the work and all that, yep.
So, we've had an issue with the Tyler Bridge area in the past.
This is just temporary. This is work that they're doing to keep it from taking the road out. Down the road, we're gonna have to do something else there.
Right. Andrew wants to say something.
Yeah, I would say that I agree that it's, yeah, there's a lot going on there, and what's unfortunate is that there's lots of things that happen upstream from where it particularly shows up. You know, where the damage is so obvious in the public eye. And unfortunately, we don't have, you know, the town doesn't have jurisdiction to, you know, go and investigate and get people to do something different.
So is there
On the-
channeling that's happening
There
up there?
could be, there
Yeah.
could be channeling, there could be other ditches that are coming down into it so that there's more water than usual. It could be that the stream is just, it's a, you know, it's a highly erodible stream given the soil conditions and the bedrock, and so it's, you know, yeah.
So you're just putting up
It's
the
like the
point.
problem is showing up there, but there's
Yeah.
probably problems, there's probably the cause of the problems are further upstream, and we have to deal with it right there.
I suspect there's probably a tree down across that brook somewhere that's kicked it over. It could be anything, but is there any real solution?
Just trying to further upstream, slow it down, have it have access to floodplain in other places.
To overflow, yeah.
Overflow in places that aren't so close to public infrastructure or to private homes. So, I think that's the lesson that we're learning, is that the more, Hollow Brook has been highly straightened, starting probably in the 60s, but you can see where the old road used to go, and it wasn't a straight shot through the hollow. And so they just moved the stream to one side of the road, because who wants to have a bunch of culverts or bridges to maintain? And so, until that stream readjusts and has room to slow down and have more meanders in it, we're gonna see those problems.
So if we move forward, which I assume we will, but we'll find out, what's the longer term? Will you have a look at that and
Well,
see?
yeah, we'll have to look at it again come
Yeah.
spring.
Yeah.
One suggestion was putting a concrete wing wall there, increasing the size of that, but how long, I don't know, we're meeting with the state over it, so.
Okay.
And they're the ones that are gonna tell us what we can do there.
I guess that's what I would ask, is why do we not put something more solid there? Then we know this is an issue. This is the second time I can remember this one, probably more for you. But
So it's fair to
This is
say.
one of those things that's something's gotta be done now.
Yeah.
Because it's almost to the road, so.
Yep.
But will this money be wasted that you do now?
No, not really.
Yes, because you could add on to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's Tom's point, is like,
Yeah.
are we gonna be throwing away these dollars? Yeah.
Right.
No, I don't wanna see that wash away again.
Right.
No, it'd certainly be good if we could have somebody, if we were allowed to pour a concrete wall there, just, it's like Andrew said, it's all gravel down through there. It really does wash quite easily.
And with that, we can apply for a structures grant for that,
Okay.
so.
But we also, I think the other thing too is to kind of go upstream and see
Yeah.
where we could get some cooperation from landowners, where we could get, we could be slowing it down. That's,
Are we gonna make proposals on these separately, Hollow Road and
I think
Taylor
we're doing
Bridge?
both at once.
Then can I make a motion to approve funds to repair Hinesburg Hollow and Tyler Bridge Road?
Second.
We need to put an amount.
Yeah.
Based on the
based,
amounts, right?
I think based on the estimates. which
Based on the
gives a little
estimates,
wiggle
yep.
room there.
Yeah.
That sound all right?
Yep.
We're still working toward FEMA.
Yeah, so that FEMA,
Good
that's
question.
gonna take a while, and I think that the municipalities are going to get help, financial help, but it's not, I think it just went across the governor's desk at some point in December. Yeah, so it's gonna take a
okay.
while. Yeah.
And we don't have any choice, but it would be nice.
Yeah,
if that was
it sounds like
Right.
we're in the running anyways, yeah, so. And, I'd be looking, when you do have time in the spring, to take a look at a more permanent thing, and if there's an opportunity for us to take a look going upstream, and, that's Starksboro there.
no, Hinesburg. It's all Hinesburg, Hollow Brook. It starts on Lincoln Hill and it
Oh,
comes
okay,
down. It does
yeah,
go
right,
through Starksboro
Right.
along
I was
Hollow.
thinking Tyler Bridge.
Yeah, Tyler Bridge is,
It's all
That is
Hinesburg.
Going
it's all
upstream.
Hinesburg, yeah.
Upstream is Hinesburg, downstream is Starksboro.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there's a little
Yeah,
section where it is Starksboro.
Yeah.
Where Hollow Brook, but
Yeah.
up by the trailer park
Okay.
on Hollow Road.
Yeah. All right, so we have the motion and it's seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that motion passed. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is budget review. So we've got 3 meetings, including today, to review the budgets. And my hope is that as we touch base on different topics, any significant issues or opportunities, you want to add something, you want to take something away, or you want to really question something, now's the time to do it rather than the last night when we have to approve it. And so we had a couple things in our packet, and you forwarded the actual spreadsheet, I think, in an email.
Yeah, just because Dropbox makes the Excel versions a little messed up, so let me just open my own.
And we had a couple of items. One is the capital narrative, so we can look at when items are in the capital transfer, which can be a large number in the budget, and then, I was looking for that. I couldn't find it. It's like, I know I had it. So first item on the agenda is the highway budget.
So you guys talked about this last time, and you've gone through all of the department budgets now. And so the January meetings are your work sessions to kind of start going through specific.
And I'll start off, I put in my memo or my little sheet that, starting off, one is the budget now is, the way it's presented is, a lot higher than I think the town can afford. And so looking at some opportunities here, I had said, that maybe we push off the hiring of an additional person in the highway, and also the push off for another year, this would be the second year, the sand processing screen. Both are great ideas, but I think at some point, we've got to pick the ideas that we can afford, I guess, right now. So I think those are the 2 items I had put in. So I'll sort of start off since I'm the one who brought those up. There's a few other increases in there, not anything really significant.
Let me just, I've highlighted the things, changes that I've made, some things were highlighted from before the increases, anything that's, over $5,000 increase or decrease are highlighted here. In the highway budget, I'm not sure that what you have, if it's the same. I only did a slight decrease to the utilities just because they're more dialed in now.
Yeah.
So rather than the 24,000, 22,000. It's not a lot of savings, but I was having to kind of go through line by line trying to find some additional things. So that was the only one that I felt like we could really do. What I also did, you'll see the capital transfer has changed. What we've been trying to do is start saving towards, replacing equipment in advance rather than having to take out the loans. So then we were on a good trend this year. As we're looking to make cuts, I had to kind of go through everything. And so I reduced, I think for the 2009 dump truck that was scheduled to be replaced, we've already put, in the current year, we put 20,000 in reserve for it. And we had slated 25,000 for FY21. I removed the 25,000, I put 5,000 for FY21 transfer, and then use the 20,000 in reserves to make a first payment. So we can, still replace it on the schedule needed to be replaced, but we won't be, we don't necessarily have to take it another 25,000 out of the budget this year to transfer. We could use the reserves. So that'll just mean we'll purchase it, and the payment would be the following year if we do this lease financing that we've been doing, and we'll already have that first payment saved. And so it's not a big impact if it's just putting us back into that cycle of
paying the leases versus paying a little upfront.
And then
and I think it's fair to note that I think the purchase of this new truck was pushed out. It was originally sort of scheduled to happen, but it was already pushed out a year because it seemed like we could get by with another year. So I certainly appreciate Mike, who probably made that decision, to see that as an opportunity that, just because it was scheduled for a couple of years to be replaced, it was pushed out.
Actually, I think with and then the case tractor, let me just, so maybe remembering it wrong. So the 2009, rather than 35,000 is what we'd slated. I put 25,000 for FY21 because I think the payment's gonna, likely be around the 27,000 range. The case tractor, I used 20,000 in reserves, and then the 5,000 because we're purchasing it this year, start paying on it in FY21, so that would cover the first payment. Plus a little, depending on if the interest rates the way they are right now, the payment's estimated to be around 22,000
For 5 years?
for 5 years.
Yeah.
Yep. If we were saving on how we were going to, I could have done it in a 3-year one, but if we're going to lose, that'd be make it the payment more like 40,000.
Getting back to the proposed hire, I don't know if I put it in I should have read my little thing.
It was.
Yes.
I had
It's in the
said that, if it's pushed off, if it is pushed off, that maybe we look at that hire as being more of a mechanical hire. Doesn't mean they wouldn't do road stuff, they would, but they could also begin to sort of oversee some of the fleet stuff, certainly at the highway department, but maybe others. So that might be an opportunity there. Something that could be explored over time.
I think Mike's been looking for that.
That, the salary may have to reflect that, if in fact we were to move forward
Good
with
point.
that.
Good
So we've been
point.
talking
Yeah.
a lot about, how to recruit someone else. It's just that we're in a problem, it's across the board of being able to find people to fill these positions. But at the same time, we're taxing the people that are in the
Right.
positions right now. And so to have that fifth employee brings us back to a level that they had 20 years ago. It would allow them to do the shifts and not only in the summertime, because that's when they have to do all of their vacation time because they can't do the vacation during the winter months. And so it gives people opportunities to take their vacation and still have enough people to get the work done. And then in the wintertime, they could do shifts on call and weekends so that they're not all on call all the time. And so I bring the department heads to these sessions just so that they can go to advocate and talk. So Mike, feel free to weigh in on any of it.
I'm exhausted.
He's exhausted, exactly.
Too tired to talk.
They've been out a ridiculous amount since early November, so.
Would it make more sense then, since we're looking for number 4 and number 5, to increase the salary for number 4?
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about all kinds of things to see, and we certainly need to be exploring options, whether it's increasing salaries, offering hiring bonuses, doing something to attract, find someone. But the problem is everyone else is in the same boat as we are.
Yeah, it's a bad time to be hiring in anywhere.
So,
That might change in 5 years or 2 years, who knows, but.
school years.
Is this document in the meeting packet on the website?
Which document?
The one that's on the.
Yep, there's a PDF version of it.
What is the?
It's just number 6. Yeah, there's a lot of things under number 6. They're all budget related.
I see 6A, 6B.
Yeah, there should be a PDF document in there. Do you guys have the Dropbox open?
I have the link you sent me, I don't have the one from the
website open?
Well, it was there
It
just a
was
little
six.
while ago.
It was just six,
Oh, is it on the
Had this
website?
happen.
Yeah, on the website.
It's right here. Yeah, it's just number 6. Scooter, do you see this? It's up on the board. This is from Dropbox. Oh, no, you Dropbox from the meeting packet. That's right, you have the meeting packet.
I see a 6 FY20 budget star.
It's breaks.pdf.
If it's not in the online meeting packet, I can certainly send it to you.
That's what I'm looking, I think it is though.
Yeah, it
Should have
is.
been in there.
Yeah.
It's number 6. There are a couple number 6s.
Yep.
This one says breaks.pdf.
You're not on the website though, are you, Marilyn?
No,
You're on
I-
Dropbox.
yeah.
They're
Yeah,
talking about
the
the
website
on
is,
the
yeah.
website.
Aaron, are you on the website? Aaron's on the website, and he just opened it.
Thank you.
So it's on the website.
Yeah, it is. It is, there's 1, 2, 3, 4 of them that are just number 6, and this one is number 6 dash
FY21.
FY21 proposed budget.
Okay, great, thank you,
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah,
Yep, that's all right.
You're fine.
Ah, good.
Do you see it?
Any other discussion? I brought up the screen plant too. Removing that in an effort to save. So I'd be looking for discussion on that. I mean, I think you've talked about it for 2 years now.
And we keep pushing it off,
Yeah.
and it's,
I
we
assume
don't
that's-
have it, so.
So you put it on there so we have something to push off every year.
I don't think so. I think you
I
want
just didn't want
to.
there if that was gonna work that
I
way.
appreciate that.
But, yeah, it's one of those things, I mean, we still get somebody to come in and do it, but ties us up and it's, it's getting harder and harder.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it too, I mean, our pit's not gonna last forever either, so. But you look at it a year, like this year, where we had, 2 flood events in our 2-year period of making gravel, and we're gonna have to buy some gravel for spring, because we're almost out, because the amount of gravel we use for the Halloween storm to get our roads back into shape, and the 5 or 6 mud seasons we've had already this year.
So if you were, really looking to recapture some other funds, you could look at this. I have the capital improvement plan up right now under the 2009 International. So we put in 25,000 in the current year. We could either take this full amount of 25,000 out for FY21. We'd still have enough for the first payment, likely, or we could reduce it. We'd still wouldn't have enough for the first payment with just the 25, but we could reduce it. I could get some quotes on, what that first payment might be, and reduce it accordingly. Again, we purchase it. If you're, purchasing it in FY21, we likely wouldn't be paying for it until 22, so we'd still be.
I mean, I want to save
Yeah.
4 things. We're looking at right now 6.7% increase, and so it's hard to say, while that might be a
6.96.
smart thing to do on any particular day, your family wants to save, but if you've just been hit with a huge medical bill, you're going to pay the medical bill before you save money. And I don't want to bring a 6.5% increase to the town. So whatever opportunities there are, we need to speak up, or I'll just keep speaking up and so that's an opportunity there, I think, that maybe we leave it there as an opportunity and continue through the budget and get to a point where we
The
say,
difficult thing about this screen plant is that it's gonna save us money in the long run.
No, you don't know that.
yeah, I mean,
Well, Mike knows that.
Well, yes and no, but
It's more, definitely a matter of convenience, it sure
Yeah.
would be.
safe.
But, I mean, if the thing breaks down with the crew size like we have, and you start putting in $1,000 repairs, bang, there goes your savings.
We're not buying a new one either.
No, it's not a new one. And I agree with Phil. I think we're in the position we're in, not because we want to be, but that's where we are. And I don't want to go to town meeting with a 7% increase either. No.
We're just gonna have work to do after town meeting if it gets voted down.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's getting there for me. So we need to separate what we absolutely need from what would be nice.
We don't have to make a decision today, but I think we gotta have enough information, so when it comes time to make a decision, everybody's ready to say yes, no, and let's keep moving.
So I just highlighted those options for you, so
Okay,
you can
that
see.
sounds good, yeah.
So,
And, while we're at it, I've also put out there, as far as what we typically do 3% raises, and I'm sort of proposing the cost of living for Vermont was 1.8 or something this last year. And when you look at the health benefits are increasing each year, that also is, in a way, a pay raise. So I'm saying maybe we can hold it to 2%. I mean, I'm open for it. But at the same time, I'd like to give Renee the authority to take that 2% as a lump sum and then put it out there for the employees who qualify for a raise. And it might be that, a highway crew member who's doing an outstanding job, or maybe all of them, if their pay level is not quite as high as it should be, it's an opportunity. They could get more than 2. They could get 3. That would mean somebody else would get a little less, but maybe that's how it's done.
Maybe appropriately.
Right. I mean, somebody who's making $80,000 a year or $75,000, 2% is more than somebody who's making
It's $1,000.
$35,000 or $40,000. So that's another thought there, and I would be open for even more, but adjusting it so that we're able to keep employees and able to reward employees who are doing more. It doesn't mean others are doing less, but to make things more fair, rather than just across the board.
So one thing to add in, during 2020, there's going to be 53 pay periods versus 52, so that's a significant difference in itself. I did do, 3% increase across the board and versus a 2% increase. However, it wasn't across the board because we've got, there's the union and
Police.
the police. So the difference between, so 3% across the board, factoring in that extra week in the year, that was significant, is a grand total. This is all of our pay, full-time employees, part-time, our recording secretaries, everyone. $1,157,528.97 at 2%, for the employees that I could move to 2%. $1,146,801.34. So going to 2% is a savings of $10,727.63 across the board.
That's funny that you came up with the total salaries of 1.1. I came up with over 2 when I added up all the salaries. So
And who did you?
I didn't do any of the sort of part-timers, all the full-timers, but
Yeah.
it's pretty quick.
So, yeah, I mean, I have a
So I
spreadsheet
didn't, that doesn't include the,
that doesn't include the
that includes
that doesn't include
the-
the on-call pay for like fire and things like that.
No, it didn't include that,
no.
but it did include the union
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So, and then I just sort of looked and said the health care benefit, just health care, is about 10% of that, additionally. And then there's other benefits, retirement and stuff too, so. It was just to sort of get a rough idea. But, what you're saying is if we were to reduce it 1% or increase it 1%, it's about $10,000,
Yeah.
right? I'll keep making my argument. I mean, since I've been on the board, it's been a 3% every year, and 3% compounds too, so.
Right.
But other salaries have gone up in the area too, so it's not like they're the only ones. And I'm not saying they don't deserve it, I'm just saying taxpayers, aren't necessarily getting 3% every year themselves.
But it's not like we got tons of people knocking at the door wanting to work for the town either. And we don't want to lose the people that we have, so I think we have to be really cautious with something like that.
Well, I mean, it's still an increase. There's many people out there who aren't getting an annual increase. I see Phil's point. I mean, it's been 3% every single year since we've been on the board, and we came on at the same time. I mean, we've held to that because we do respect our employees, and we don't want to give them a reduction in their increase is basically what this is. But I mean, you look at the numbers, and you have to respect the taxpayers as well. And this year is a challenge, more challenging than I thought it was going to be, unfortunately.
And I think the problem is, I mean, the cost of doing business continues to increase. Our grand list hasn't increased, and so that's just, factoring in very little growth in the grand list.
And the problem is that the people who are in the unions and the police, they're going to get the 3%, and other people aren't, and we are a small community, so I don't think that's going to go over very well.
I'm happy to join you on that. Where else? Find some other savings then.
Yeah. Yeah, I did.
I'd love to be able to say, let's back up. Yeah.
I think we need to make it clear, and I hate to interrupt the highway discussion, but the fact that we don't have grand list growth, and we haven't had hardly any grand list growth over the last 5 years at least, it's a bad deal that we're in. I mean, there's building all over Chittenden County, and granted, we don't want Hinesburg to look like Williston, but if you don't have incremental growth, all of these expenditures that just keep going up every year, it's more on the tax. It's the same people getting hit over and over and over again for these increases. And at some point, we either need to really break the budget down and make hard reductions, or we need to grow our grand list. But I mean that.
We need to do both.
Or what?
We probably need to do both.
Well, true, but I mean you have to have the grand list growth just to keep up with your expenditures, and it is what it is. But people need to think about that when they're talking about basically running things out of town or making it difficult. Other towns are seeing this growth to keep their budgets in line or their reductions down. We haven't had that for a very long time, and it's unfortunately this year, in my opinion, is starting to catch up. What are we looking at? Less than 1%?
What's that?
In grand list growth?
What are you estimating?
I did 0.5% only because it was,
Yeah.
but that even, I hope that we get that. But
So that's basically no new buildings, businesses, anything. It's just not good for a town that wants to flourish.
And we've tried this. I mean, we haven't overextended, but we have sized things with an expectation, or at least when I think of things, town highway garage, police department.
Right.
Now thinking about the fire and possible ambulance or those discussions, I don't think of, here's where we are. I think, well, we're going to have a little growth too, and so we don't want to in 10 years have to build another highway garage in addition to it.
Right.
We want to be there and be able to ride through it.
I don't think we were foolish to build the things that we built with the highway garage, the water, the police department. I don't think we were foolish to do that, but there was the expectation when these things got passed that
a little growth would fill in.
A little growth would fill in, and that's just not happening right now.
But some of that's due to the lack of water too, right?
It hasn't yet.
You don't think? That's just held some of that expectation up.
It might have.
You know?
It might have a little bit. But it hasn't held up
Yeah.
anybody yet.
So I know it's not really popular, it's just coming from the world that I come from, is go back to your departments. Say, take your pencil, sharpen them, and figure out
I have. I mean,
what
I've
you can
gone
do.
back. I've met with the department heads. We've kind of gone through line by line. I've been going through line by line. It's if you become really familiar with this budget, it's our budget in general. It's a very bare bones budget. We've got a very small little workforce that are shouldering a lot of work, a lot of a heavy lift. There isn't a lot of fluff in here. A lot of this it's salaries, it's payments that we have. We can't adjust those. So we've gone line by line, like I said, and there are some changes we're making. There's some utility lines that, as the new buildings, they've gotten those dialed in, we can, make some decrease in those projections. Like we've been saving towards replacing buildings or replacing equipment. We can sort of go backwards again and to where we're just going to pay as we go. So we have some savings there that we had, targeted putting a larger dollar amount in FY21 that we can, like I said, step back and take that out. But, there's not you really have to go through and understand what's in here. And so I'm happy to answer any.
And I trust Renee, and I'll make it public that if anybody suggests something that she says, no, that's gonna, that's foolish, it's gonna break our back, it's gonna cost money more next year, to raise the question or to bring in the department head that says, I really can't do that, and I would hope that, it would be done. And I'm not gonna put words in Mike's mouth, but the screen plant, while it would be ideal and good and help him do his job and potentially save some money in the long run, it's probably not the top priority of getting other things done, and the new tractor.
And he and I talked about that, and he did volunteer. The screen plan is, we could, if we're trying to find some savings, we could hold off.
Any other discussion on, I just want to keep us going here.
Yep.
Highway?
And really, any other cost increase that were in the general budget were cost increase. Stuff went up.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we went from, I think salt last year was 78 and change.
A
State
ton.
bid this year was $85 a ton. Granted, we got to stay at the lower price with a different company, but I don't know if that'll happen again next year. So,
And the brush cutting, you increased it to.
just the amount of, the trees that are.
Yep.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And the
Yep.
large borer stuff, and,
Yep.
we gotta get them down. Silver Street
that
is
would be-
lined with
yeah.
dead trees.
That, I think there's a case of, whatever it is, pound foolish, nickel, yeah, right.
If you look at the last tab, major drivers increase, that I list out anything on the top half is things that are 5,000 or greater increases, and the bottom half is 5,000 or greater decreases in the budget. And so I kind of go line by line, and so for highway, it's, the salaries, because we have a proposed 5th employee in there. But just for salaries again alone, it's that 53rd week pay period makes a significant difference too. So even if we do 2%, there's still less savings from a 3% to a 2% because of that 53rd week. And then the brush cutting. So that's it for highway as far as things that were 5,000 or greater increases. A lot of their capital is just payments.
Right. Any other comments on highway?
I don't think so right now.
Don't fall asleep on this mic. All right, so we'll move on to a community resource center. And there was a change this year of a separate line item, so taxpayers can look at that and And
You're done. Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Mike. And because it is focused primarily just on Hinesburg, we went along with that. That is the
Can
next one,
I
right?
volunteer to?
Sure.
So they're not going to be here tonight, so I can just speak to it. But
Okay.
can we move that one down
Yep.
further? We've got Laura Capsis here for the Energy Committee.
Okay,
We could
yeah.
go to that, and then we have got the police here waiting
Okay,
as well.
sure.
as
So
the
we'll jump
Iroquois
to the
Association.
Energy Committee.
Yes.
I think we last time, and so Chuck's not here today.
No, he had to
Okay.
go to a funeral. in Utah.
So, all right, so I was gonna do a mea culpa. From the last time, I kind of jumped on him a little bit, and you know, so I thought about it, and I think part of it is one, out of all topics, energy efficiency. I've been living it since the '70s. I mean, that's what I went to school for, and renewable energy. So I'm pretty passionate about it, and I think it was more just frustration that, you know, I want the town to do more. That was one thing that I should get out there. And then the other thing was, you know, I could open my eyes a little more. And when I was like, you know, we should be doing something with the police station, I drive by the thing every day. If you look at it, that roof is not orientated for any real solar. And the fire station is, if it could support panels, which I don't know if it can or not. So, so I did tell this to Chuck already once, but I wanted to say it in public because I kind of jumped on him a little bit, I think, and I apologize for that. So.
I'm sure he'll be grateful for that. Thanks.
And so last time there was some discussion about studying, in particular, 4 buildings, and then there was some discussion like, do we really need to do the highway? And I think Chuck said no, he'd pull that out, and that's been adjusted. And also to look at some solar potential land that might be appropriate for solar and advantageous, whether it's a brownfield or something like that.
And actually, the Energy Committee is currently getting some proposals on solar for, you know, all the town buildings in general, just to kind of see what those costs would come in at.
We are, ours is, so we discussed this extensively last night, and we came back with 3,100, which matches our fiscal year 2020 budget. You guys are closed at 2,800. So I'd like to take that back to the committee to discuss, but I think that, I mean, hearing the conversations tonight, sounds like that's what we need to hit. So I think we can try and figure out something to hit it. And we did take out the garage. We did some other shifting as well to try and make it all work. Yeah.
So when Chuck was here, this is $1,500 lower than what you guys had originally proposed. And so while he was here, we decided to remove the $1,500 from it.
Yeah, and I
of the
think that was
highway.
just a matter of Chuck's budget numbers not necessarily aligning with some of the numbers we got from the contractors for quotes for different work. So when we talked about it last night, we came up with 3,100. But I can tell them that this is what we're being given, if this is what we're being given, and we'll go have that conversation.
It seems to me like this would be something that you could get a grant for.
There are some things. So the energy, it's the Community Foundation of Vermont. They do Spark funds and a few other grants. I don't think it'd be as much for the assessments as it would be perhaps. There are things we can get funding for. I don't know that it's all of these things, but one thing that we can do, which we did this year, is leverage some Efficiency Vermont resources and funding. So for example, this year you might remember we had a substantial amount in our budget for workshops, which we've been able to reallocate to expedite some of the assessments to happen this year because we got Efficiency Vermont to completely cover all the costs for those workshops, including the supplies and food for the attendees. And so I think we can get creative and work towards this, yeah.
It just seems a little frustrating to me, frankly, that we're spending this money in a year when we're really trying to trim the budget. And this is assessments that are going to ask us to spend more money to eventually make things more efficient. But it's It's a couple steps of spending money before we get there.
That is correct. It does take time and energy and investment in order to know the best steps to take to get your buildings to where you want them to be. And there are a lot of trade-offs that have to happen in the process.
So maybe it would be better to do this another year when we're not 8% over.
I'm going to disagree. I mean, I think this is pretty small money. I think that we know it when we spend it in the right way, we do save money. And I think this town wants to do that. When we had a bond vote for those, for solar, 200 and something thousand, it passed by nearly 3/4. And I didn't think it was sold very well to the people, but it passed. And the last couple of years, it's easily paid for itself. So all of these things, will end up saving in the long run. And I think that it's supported by the town. So I would support this. And I'm not
happy to
sure
be
that
convinced.
that's much to ask to, understand if we're going to spend money, and in some cases, we may find grants for some of this, but if we're going to spend money, most projects that are done well, you can get financing and it will still, in the same as that solar project or other projects, will end up paying for itself. So, and I think the town wants to do that.
And I do think we have a pretty good track record of being judicious in how we spend money on the committee. And when we do feel like we're not ready or we're not making the correct decisions, we do hold back rather than just move forward for the sake of moving forward. So, and I think that there's a good bit of momentum. There's also a timing issue happening right now, especially with the community solar projects that we want to move forward on. Assessing the incentives to the town are going down every year that we don't move forward on it, and so the townspeople who can't do solar on their own property, every year we wait, that's that much less money the town has the potential to make on that type of program. So I would say if the town really does want to hit those renewable standards that we've set in our plan, now would be the time to act on them. And if you all would like, more detailed information or to be more involved as we go step by step, we could certainly do that if that would give confidence or comfort to what we're doing.
I see what Mary Lee is saying, and I kind of agree. Because of the buildings that we're going to be assessing, I just don't know if a professional assessment is what we need, because we have people who are in the buildings every day, and I've talked to some of them, and they have an idea what's wrong in the building. So are we paying somebody who's unfamiliar with the building as it is to come in and assess what's going on? Or are we not taking the opportunity to talk to the people who are there, bring those engineers back in who set the systems up and try to figure out what's wrong? Because Chuck mentioned that the police department is leaky. I don't see it being leaky.
So I haven't personally walked through or assessed any of the facilities. I can tell you when I do an assessment, the very first thing I do is interview the occupants of the space and find out exactly what their experience is working in that space. And after that, we do complex testing, including infrared scans, blower door testing. And my understanding from the town energy plan is that we have very aggressive energy efficiency and renewable energy goals. And in order to do that and to do it cost effectively, you do have to do a full analysis and a comprehensive assessment. You can't just go in and work on one particular system at a time. Otherwise, you lose those integrated benefits. And that's where you might have heard of the sum of you get 1 + 1 = 3 rather than 2, because you're doing things at the same time and you're making good trade-offs in that process. So one example might be you've probably already replaced the lighting in the buildings, but that's commonly a first step, is to replace lighting. But if you do that at the same time that you adjust your HVAC systems and controls, then you can start to combine those two and get much higher savings, whether it's through ventilation controls and occupancy sensors tied to the lighting. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity there. So I would say that here's what I would ask is, before you slash, give us an opportunity to put something in writing back to you all to show you why now's the time, how the money would be spent, and that way you can have something to really react to with more information. And do it in a thoughtful way. I can feel the tension in the room right now, and so I don't want to. I just don't want us to be too reactive in the moment. But I appreciate your being thoughtful because I'm a taxpayer as well. So that's what I would ask for. But I can go back to the committee and say 2,800. Let's give them a very detailed proposal, and you all can review that. Does that work?
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I might stick around. I want to hear the Lake Iroquois.
okay. Which one should we go to next?
So now, where are we at here?
Police.
Police, like Iroquois?
Yeah, we've got
Police.
the police here, so.
Better satisfy them. All right, we'll do the police.
You guys can step right up to the guest of honor seats. Come on.
So, there were no adjustments since the last time.
So the only things that I've heard from any of the board were you wanted to talk about the vehicle.
Yep, that was me.
And then also vehicle replacement. I think that was the main thing.
That was it.
Yeah.
So I'm the bad guy again, and in my sort of overview. Oh yeah, that's right. I'm not really a bad guy. And we've talked about this for a number of years, so that's kind of why I'm like, maybe we can push off one of the purchases, even though it doesn't really save anything in this year. It will save in the following years, and it will sort of flow down. So I put that out. Other than that, I didn't really see much. I didn't want to do anything with salaries. I think we've been we've heard Caleb and Anthony say that it's helped, so that's good to know. I was wondering if on the salary, when it was done, it was before we made the hire, who I got to meet yesterday as he was volunteering up at the ski area, which was great to see. I'm like, oh, this guy's got a uniform on. Who's this? And come to find out, it's our new officer. What's his name? Brett. Yeah. Okay. Volunteering up there, which was great. So I was wondering if the salary can be fine-tuned a little bit.
We did.
You already did that.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep. So
So-
I asked them to adjust because of now that we know the
Yeah.
salary, and so they did and sent me the
He seemed like a great guy.
He
Anyways,
is.
just
From Richmond.
yeah. So anybody else any other comments or
The only other-
if you guys have any concerns or issues?
The only other thing I made a change on, and I talked to these guys about, was the utilities. Again, it seems to be getting dialed in a little bit, or at least improved from what it was before. And so we decreased it by 2,000.
Okay.
But, that's sort of out of our control, what it ends up being. But if, we're doing any other energy efficient things or.
Might be able to gain on it.
Yeah, we came in at 5,730 this in FY19, so
Is that just heat, hot water?
that
Air
is the
conditioning.
Oh, and AC, of
combined,
course.
yep.
And the I don't think you call them garages, but the garages are maintained at a slight level, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Inside there, yeah.
The heat barely kicks on
Yeah.
in there. It's just enough to.
Keep things from freezing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then I spoke to the solar people 2 days ago. They had come out. And they had also said that the fire department was a better candidate, although
Yeah.
they thought they could get a good amount of solar from our roof,
Good.
just better on the fire department.
Yeah, yeah. When I looked at it after the next day, I was like, yeah. And I think, and a little editorializing is, when that building was built, it was discussed changing the roof slightly to accept solar easier, and in my opinion, that was a mistake. We didn't do that. So, Because now you can't, you're stuck with it for 50 years.
The only line in their budget that exceeds the 5,000 is the salary line. They did make some increase in the station professional services, which they
Right.
spoke to the last time. So that increased by just under the 5,000, the 4,680. But the rest of them you can see are either level from last year or smaller increases.
So I'll go, and I'll again agree with Phil about the vehicles. We've talked about it for a long time. And it's obviously we're kind of in the ideal situation now. I guess my recommendation would be kind of the same rotation, but keep the car, pay for the vehicle in 3 years, but keep it for 4. And kind of have that as our new, I feel like a vehicle should be able to last 4 years.
Oh, they do.
We do keep them 4 years.
Oh, we keep them 4?
So, yeah, so
Yeah.
the first year we purchase it, right? We purchase it and then we don't pay it until next year.
Yeah, right.
Right, there we go.
We pay them off in 3, keep them for another 3. And then they're
Okay.
replaced at 6
Yeah.
years, and usually around 100,000 miles.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right,
So,
well, that clarifies
yeah,
it.
so my argument is for somehow we got in this rotation of 2 and then 2, and it'd be, sort of stretch them out a little bit. Which would mean one of their vehicles would have to go 1 more year. So, and it wouldn't save anything this year,
Right.
but it would, next year, it would save that 1 year of payment of one vehicle.
So FY '21 is the final payment of the 2018 Interceptor and the Tahoe.
And we would start in with payments of the other ones.
And so then they were targeted to replace the older Interceptors in FY '21 and then start paying on them in FY '22.
3 Interceptors.
And just to clarify up there, those say 15. When we
They're not
started this
real
process,
15s, yeah.
it's
Right.
really 14. It just
Yeah.
they end up getting registered as 15, and but the year that we actually
purchased.
started was 2014.
Right, the first year the payment was 15.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if it has to do with the payment or
I think
more
it's
to do
their
with-
model
with
year.
the
Yeah.
model year
It's the
that they
model
come
year.
out with. You
Yeah.
order a 14, by the time you get it, it's model year 15.
Right.
And then we sit here scratching our heads wondering what year that car is and when it needs to get replaced.
So they're 6 years and about 100,000 miles.
What do the 2 Interceptors, what are the mileages of them now?
I believe they're in the mid 70s.
We're slated that they'll be between 90 and 100 by the time.
It's 20,000 a year ish.
Any other comments on that? Anybody?
The only other capital.
Sounds like everything else, and doesn't sound like there's much other support for my grand idea.
The only other capital payment besides the vehicle payments is the mobile technology fund that they've, the 10,000 per
Yeah.
year for that.
And we expect we'll continue to do that as
Yeah.
you show. there.
Right.
Yeah.
When would that take effect as you described with the laptop going from the car to the office and back and forth? Are you doing that already?
We started already.
You did?
But the problem is, it's going to take away. Basically, it's going to take away all of the laptops in the car now. So enough people have to have the tablet in order, so that they have one at their desk, at their desktop, and then they could go to the car and still have a computer.
Yep.
So we can't completely start changing them in the cars until everybody has the tablet inside.
So would that be maybe a whole nother year, this year and then another year?
it's a slower rollout, but necessary. Our computers are, I think they're, even the newest ones are still running Windows 7.
Yeah.
And we have 3 that are newer. I think the newest ones were purchased in, I believe it was 2012. So the laptops were purchased in 2014. So, I mean, we're getting to the point where everything needs to be replaced, and the idea is to not replace the car ones, to be able to use the same ones from inside as outside.
No, I think it's a good idea.
What's the operating system again on the current ones? 7? Windows 7?
Yes.
So for me, that's a concern because it goes out of support in a week. And that means, so what that means is there's no more security patches. There's no more, it's a vulnerability from a security standpoint for me. But I'm that dork, so.
All right.
It's coming up really soon, isn't it? I think, isn't it, Jeff?
A week?
No. Nothing else.
Oh, okay. Well, Aaron was just saying, yeah, that deadline is coming up.
Yeah.
The deadline is
14th.
Yes, I thought it was this month sometime.
All right. Do you guys have any other thoughts? All right. Good, thanks. And, it does appear like you've, kept the budget to the bare bones. So, I mean, we have a level of service that's expected, and, we haven't actually necessarily increased it. I mean, you talked about at some point we'll need another person, and, but we didn't jump on that this year for reasons. But we can expect in the future that will be looming in front of us. All right, good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not a bad guy, okay? Thanks for helping me. Thanks for helping me with that.
Watch out. Words mean things.
All right, now, Lake Iroquois Association.
All right.
Come on up.
Where's that, down the bottom?
Yeah. That one is near the end, right?
Yep, yep, near the,
Hi there.
Thank you for inviting me.
All we have to say is we're giving out money and people come.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know, it seems like you're taking it away, Phil.
Yeah, I was,
Trying to figure out how.
I think it's really important that I share with you that the fire department's here, and without them, we couldn't function over at the lake at the boat access. And I want to recognize these guys for the effort and the energy that's shared with us. So thank you guys for everything. So Renee invited me here last night, and here I am, and we've got a lot going on. Today we met with the lake management company that is proposing to do a herbicide application with us. We also met with the Department of DEC and Lakes and Ponds as a preliminary meeting today, just to kind of look at the opportunities and see what we have in front of us for an opportunity. And lots of information. We met until 4 o'clock this afternoon, and we're meeting as a group tomorrow to continue the discussion. So there's a lot of information. Like I had said to you back in a month ago when I was here, we will come to you, I hope, by the 1st of February with a presentation on how we're going to proceed with our multifaceted approach to deal with the milfoil issue. Right now, we're taking in all of the components to make a decision whether we can move forward on a permit process, and whether we can afford to financially support it over a period of 4 or 5 years, and whether it is going to be feasible and responsible. And then we hope to start some kind of a public meeting process in that once we make that decision. But we're bringing together all of the components and all the players this week to try to figure out all of it. So, I'll be honest with you.
You've been through it once in a way, and it didn't turn out on how you were hoping, and so
Correct.
I imagine that's
And we're looking at all of it.
Yeah.
And it really is it's a big process that we have to go through before we even sign on the dotted line. And just the financial pieces alone, we have to be responsible for, and that's that's one of my largest concerns, other than the health and welfare of the lake and community. So we're in that process now, and we will be working through that during the next 4 weeks, and before we finalize the process. So lots of information today. I mean, it was a great meeting, but a lot of I got the preliminary figures just on if we did do the herbicide, and we're talking about potentially a few $100,000 over a 5-year period, which I think I shared with you the last time. But the first year potentially could be upwards to $65,000-$70,000. So that's a big nut. And I assume that we're here to discuss what I requested for funding back a month ago, and I welcome your comments on that. And
So just to clarify, so we've got 15,000 in there, and I mean, you talked about the multifaceted approach. So the continue with the mats, continue with the boat cleaning, and then how much of this would be used toward the herbicide process is, and I got to assume that really none of this would actually go to here, put some on. It's the process of going through the permitting and understanding and whatnot. Is that true?
in the situation where we were identifying today, is that there is a process if there was an herbicide used in the lake, that potentially we can only apply to 40% of the lake, which has been a process that's been identified with the DEC and also Fish and Wildlife, and they've come to an understanding that would be 40% of the lake would potentially be treated at one time for 1 year. But that 40% includes using diver-assisted suction harvesting, any of our mats that's used around the lake on the bottom barriers, also private use or private permitted mats that are used on the bottom. We can only achieve a 40% coverage. So
amongst all of the treatments,
all of those different opportunities. So if we look at using, say, the littoral zone that we're looking at is about 100 acres that is affected, and we could potentially be looking at doing 40 acres, but we would have to give up all of the other opportunities for that year. So we're looking at potentially $1,300 an acre, $60,000 for a given year if we just did that herbicide. Well, in this case, we then have to identify what is our best approach to that process, and whether or not we would then have a use where we would not use any herbicide and just use the opportunities that we have for the last few years. And so if we did move forward with the permit and the permit was denied, then we would look at using money with the different opportunities other than herbicide. But we're still looking at given $20,000 for Dash to do the hand pulling at a minimum. And we've had this discussion before. It's not the most effective way, but if that is our only opportunity, then that is our only opportunity. So we're trying to, but we're looking at the whole 5-year plan, looking at a 5-year management plan, which is what we are required to put forth with our application. And the 5-year management plan also identifies financially what we would spend at different times. And we could conceivably have 2 years where we use just suction harvesting and just bottom barriers. Weed mats. It depends on how the 5-year plan is designed. And that's what we're looking, that's why we're taking so much time to do this and do this right. So we've got a lot on our plate, a lot of opportunities, but we're at the same time taking our time and making sure that we present it right.
So I just have one question, and maybe it helps answer other questions. So, I mean, if we move the 15,000 forward and it gets approved at town meeting, I think the only controversial issue, there's probably more, but the one controversial issue is the herbicide.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, is it fair to say that you really, with this 15,000, really, other than advancing the opportunity and going through the permitting and all that, would it be fair to say really none of those dollars would actually buy herbicide? Or do you think you potentially might be in FY21 using some of this money and you have gone through all the other processes and got all the approval and be able to actually apply it? And there's no right or wrong answer. I'm just sort of wondering.
I guess that's what my question was. Are you asking, would we use a portion of that 15,000 for herbicide? Is that what your question is?
Yeah.
Bill?
Do you think you'd actually purchase the service
if
with
we
some
had,
of that?
To be honest with you, if we had to, or if we did go the route of going through the 5-year plan, that and we used 40%. We did 40% of the lake in the first year. Given the timing that we're looking at today, we probably are going to move into fiscal year 21 for the first application, potentially.
So potentially you
potentially.
Yep.
So, just like we did the last time, we didn't use all the funds that were designated the last time that we went through this process. Right. And so it depends on how it's identified.
Okay.
And I would ask that it be identified for milfoil mitigation.
Right.
And not, herbicide. Yeah. And let us determine how we're going to proceed with that. I think we're very responsible. We've proven that. And that we are coming in front of you asking for this with a multifaceted approach. And there's a lot to this plan. This is not just going out and plopping chemicals in the water.
Right.
This
right.
is.
Oh no, I get that. I think just that for some people this is a big topic, and so they want to know, and that potentially. Yeah, go ahead. Identify yourself.
My name is Elizabeth Deutsch. I live right off the lake where they actually park their truck in my driveway to do the water testing. And so my clarifying question on that is how, I have two actually. One is how you can ask for the money before you've come up with a budget. So you said that you're in a 4-week process. So you're asking the voters to decide on a financial commitment, and I have sat here listening to how we're not going to be able to afford to upgrade our buildings, that we can't help with making them more environmentally efficient, and yet we're just going to write a blank check for $15,000 and trust somebody to make a decision about how to treat the water. And so I would like some clarification on that if you haven't fully done your budget, then how do you know what to ask for, and how do we know as voters what we're voting on? And then the other part of that is when you applied for the permit the last time, you didn't use the correct name of the lake. So you just said that we should trust you to handle this with the details of this without any oversight. And yet your permit process didn't use the correct name of you didn't even use the name Lake Iroquois in your permitting process. So if you can't be trusted to fill out a form, how can I trust you to keep my water safe? And my water, I have a dug well, it is 30 feet off the testing point. It has never gone dry since the house was built in the 1800s. But it's a dug well, it's not a drilled well. So this will affect my water very personally. Also, in the literature that the company puts forward, it says you cannot compost any of the dead material, the vegetation that comes up. So if you can't compost it, do you have a plan, since Chittenden County is going to composting for vegetation and food waste, what is your plan and how is that going to affect the money? And have you allocated that? And it is the responsibility of the permitting town, based on the DEC, that you have to provide water for the houses that are affected by this. And have you budgeted for the 6 people in my house and all of the people who live for all of the time that you do this? It also says in the literature that the company puts out that livestock cannot drink from that water once you've treated it. And so, how will I have my free-range eggs, my organic free-range eggs? What will I do about that? And I am just one person who lives there. It goes for a mile downstream. And so have you accounted for all of those costs in this? Because I'm not hearing in what you're saying that you have accounted for those costs. Nobody has reached out to me in any sense on this, and I watch them test the water. I stand on my porch and chat with them, and yet not one person from the Lake Iroquois Association has ever notified me. And there's no permit for me to review. So I can't do anything except show up here, where you get an invitation and I do not.
Okay, our meetings are warned. This is a warned item on our meeting. Okay, and we're not going to debate the herbicide here. What we are going to talk about is their budget request, and I think you heard me wanting to clarify what that budget is, because if it entails herbicide, then that is a little different than washing boats. I think it's more of a concern for some people. Maybe not everybody, but for some people. So we are trying to clarify it, but we're not going to debate the herbicide or not. We're going to talk about their budget request, and I think what I'm hearing is they are asking for $15,000, and you're asking that this budget doesn't necessarily have specifics like this for mats or this for herbicide, that you would, as a committee, as a group, you would use it to control based on what you find out going on in the future.
Back in November, when we first started this process on the financial piece, we were asked by Renee and your board to come in and make a presentation based on what we were planning for fiscal year 21. And fiscal year 21, in our estimation, could include an herbicide permit, which we haven't filed at this time. Number one. Number two, it also could include spending $25,000 in hand pulling and purchasing of mats. But we haven't identified that yet. I appreciate the fact that you're questioning whether or not $15,000 is going to be used for herbicide or whether it's going to be used for, multiple approaches. In this situation, since the previous application process, we learned the hard way was that until we can get the permit in hand, then we can have all the best laid plans, but we've got to have a we've got to have a fallback plan, and the fallback plan back then, and still is today, for us to move forward with dash, hand pulling, mats, and because at this time, and even meeting today with DEC and Lakes and Ponds, we were told that part of this plan should be that we've got to have a fallback. We have to have a plan in place that allows us to move forward to deal with a situation that is out of control, that our milfoil is in crisis. So they warned us that that's going to be the case, that might be the case, and that we're planning that. So to answer your question, Phil, I can clearly say that it would be best if it allowed us to use those funds in multiple opportunities. Because to be honest with you, 21 is right around the corner, and this is a long process. This is not just going to happen in the next few months.
And I think it's fair to say last time was 30,000. I think was it went to town meeting, and I've said it before, and I'll say it again. I was surprised it passed, but it did pass. But it ended up we got that money back because and what you're saying now is, hey, this is less. It's not specifically for that, but it could be used for that. And if when we get to FY21, if the permit doesn't go through, or for whatever reason you decide you're not going to use it for herbicide, that we still leave it there because you're earmarking it as milfoil control. And that could be any number of things, including herbicide. All right. Yeah.
Yes,
Hi,
my name is
Roger.
Roger Donegan. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate your point about maybe identifying whatever Hinesburg allocates to this process not be used for the herbicide. And I'd like to go back to the last experience. Now, I do appreciate the work that the Lake Iroquois Association does. It's a great outfit, and so. But this is about a very narrow and a very important point. The last time this thing got kicked off, it was presented to the voters, vote this money in. Then the Lake Association went for the permit. And I think that little bit of, well, what do we vote on and what is this now? I think there is ability for the Lake Association to present the plan now so that the voters really know what they're voting on. Because there is going to be a quandary when they come into town meeting night, if that's the way it's going to be. Is it going to, and that's another question I had tonight. Is it going to be a line item? Is it going to be on a voice vote? Or is it going to be in the town report? Because there's 3 different ways of doing this. And there's 3 different ways, 3 different degrees of transparency. But that's not, I can't change the rules that you guys have to go by. The Lake Association has kicked off their plan. It's already been in 2 weeklies. It's almost very clear what they're going to do. So, it's not like the only people talking about this is us tonight. There's people already talking about it, so.
And we have, I think the last time we put it on as a separate warned item, this budget item. Today, the way it is right now, we could change it. It's embedded within a committee's budget. It shows as Lake Iroquois Association, but I think last time the board said this is a bigger topic, and it ended up being its own warned item, and therefore had more visibility, I think, and a pretty good discussion at town meeting. And then a specific vote just for that. And I think we've said, any of these items, we could do that too.
There was also a conversation that we had in the last meeting where we talked about having it go on Australian ballot, right? That was the discussion.
That's always a possibility.
In my opinion, since there's so much that's unknown about this herbicide, including unintended consequences, if it does work, maybe the lake will then be filled with blue-green algae like many other water bodies are, and you'll wish that you had the milfoil. But since we're in a tight budget year, I would really recommend that we just reduce the amount to the Lake Iroquois Association to $7,500 for this year, and take your time then researching the herbicide and figuring out your plan, and come back next year. You'll be ready then. You'll have had maybe time to even give presentations to the public and really give a solid plan.
So I guess I want to make something clear, Marilee, and to the board, and also to Elizabeth and the audience, is that, you know, we're in this process. It does take a lot of time. We are not, you know, we're not paid staff as volunteers. We're working diligently to, number one, identify the process. Number two, to be responsible in obtaining all the information before we move forward. Our intention is to, no matter what, have a public forum that will identify what our plan is, whatever it is, so that everybody knows. And whether it goes to vote in March or not, if we're planning on doing a vote in March for any dollar amount, we're planning on doing a presentation, public forum, to let everybody know what's going on. It's not something that we're just saying, oh, let's keep turning the clock back. That's not the case. We've worked our butts off on this, and we've got a lot of work to do. And I welcome anyone to help us in this process.
So I support you guys. The lake is it's a mess. My problem with the increase is kind of follows up on what Mayor Lee says, is that are we far enough along in the process to justify the 15 this year? Because as I've said before, I'm not a fan of the suction harvesting and all of that, because I think it's futile. If we were farther down the road and the public hearings were done, all the vetting of the chemical and all of this, I would certainly support it. But at this point, I don't know. I kind of agree with Mayor Lee that maybe a little more needs to be done. As much as I'd like to see the lake cleaned up, I mean, I've been through these things myself, and it takes a while. So I'd rather not have the $15,000 out there to be used for harvesting that I just think is kind of a waste. I know it's great maybe for a little while, but I think at this point, I'm not sure I can support it. I wish you were farther along despite the work, but you know, we are really tight this year.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And to go through all of this, have the debate at this point, I just don't think it's the right time. But it doesn't mean I don't support you guys, because it really is a mess up there.
Yep.
But I think a little more work, and then maybe next year would be the better time.
I'm not going to sit here and dispute any of your concerns. That's why I'm here. That's why I was here a month ago and a month before that. So we're supposed to work together. This is a community project. This is a lot going on with this project. It's been ongoing for some time, and it's going to be there until we deal with it. So, however we deal with it. So, I appreciate being able to come in front of you and have these discussions.
Jeff or Aaron, do you have anything to add, I guess?
No, echo. You know, the dollars. You know, where we are in the process, and then making sure, and I have full confidence that you'll do this, is that this is a public forum conversation continually, because it is such a big deal, and no matter where you fall on it, you know, it is a big deal.
So for me, it's I'm for cleaning up the lake. I don't know the method in which to do that. For me, just like when last time you were here, the conversation was around the plan, right? So like I mentioned, we're still going to allow boats in, even though they're the number one thing that create the milfoil. Why? You know, what is sort of what's the real, like, if money were no object, what's the plan to make it happen? And I haven't seen that. So that's my concern. It's just
The boat plan, allowing the boats in is not our decision. That, it's a state access. We're a state body. The boats are allowed through that process because of state fishing access. So we don't have the jurisdiction to shut down that access.
So does the state support us cleaning the milfoil out of the lake if they own the body?
That, if you remember, well, you weren't here, but it's been one of Andrea's biggest concerns is that we shouldn't be in this position. It should be a state-driven approach, and the body of water is a state-owned body of water. It's not owned by the Lake Iroquois group or whoever, by our communities. So it's been an ongoing conversation that we've had for some time.
The state denied the permit. They did not support this.
Okay. Yeah, I just go back to the whole plan, and the state may not approve it, or this might approve it, or who owns what. It's just what's
the state did approve this same herbicide use in 4 bodies of water in the state of Vermont this year for this past summer, with great results, by the way. So
I think if you could produce their results and anything associated with those 4 lakes, that would be very helpful going forward.
And we've been collecting that data.
I mean, I think I could support, reducing it too. I think I wouldn't mind putting on an additional requirement that this money isn't used for the herbicide, and that at some point, it'd be next year, they could come back, and at that point, they may have permit in hand or whatever. We'll have some more data and give everybody an opportunity to decide one way or the other what they want. Like I said, I didn't support it last time, but everybody did. So because they did, we move forward. That's how it works. So I guess I'd be all right with that. And at the same time, I do want to support this organization because, it's a bunch of volunteers that are trying to do the right thing.
It's also
and it's a very complicated
natural resource that we have, and that
right.
is used for many different opportunities of recreation.
Laura Cass, thank you, Phil, for your comments. Thank all of you. I'm curious to add on what you just said. Would we also be willing to put the restriction on that the funding cannot be used towards the permitting of the herbicide? So not towards the permitting process or the application process.
The permitting is, to be honest with you, is $2,000 for the permit process with a contractor. There is no additional permitting costs because we're co-applicant with LARD, the Lake Iroquois Recreation District, which is a municipality, and the state does not have a charge for the permit application when it's through a municipality.
I hear what you're saying, and I've already said what my opinion is, but at the same time, I think the permitting process is a public process, and it's going to force everything to come out on the table, and in a way, I think that is, maybe a big educational opportunity for everybody. So.
That's a good point.
So what I'm hearing is that we'll put it down to 7,500.
Yep, that's what I would like.
I think so.
No, we appreciate
All right,
anything.
I appreciate you coming.
Anything that you can do.
Yeah,
So
and
it's not.
I think this board and the town wants to continue to support.
And we appreciate your support. You know that.
This herbicide is a little hornet's nest, and
well, it's a process
to make it as public as possible.
Yep.
Bill, I have one question.
Yes.
I'm kind of From what I understand, Tom is saying that the harvesting doesn't work. The mats are somewhat ineffective also. what other options are there, I guess? I'm not, is there, I
can
understand your
drain-
concern, huh?
You can drain the lake. That's been successful in lakes in the Adirondack State Park. It's been very successful out in Washington State. You drain the lake down to a certain level, let it freeze over during the winter, and then, in our case, we would repair the dam after you do a controlled, when you let the water out, and then you bring the dam back up to a certain level, and then when the water fills back in, as it naturally would, the milfoil would have been killed. However, that is less likely to happen, and the chances that we will ever get rid of milfoil as the temperatures rise and climate change. So this area of the world has already crested the 2-degree mark that the Paris Climate Accords were trying to keep down. And so we have to really address the fact that climate change is creating a different environment for us to live in. One of those things is that plants that would not normally thrive in this environment are now proliferating at an unbelievable rate. And until we fix that problem, this problem will never change. And using chemicals have been outlawed in the Adirondack State Park. They've been outlawed in places like Washington State because they don't work. And so over and over again, they've applied these very expensive chemicals. They've had huge blue-green algae blooms, and the companies that then sell these aquatic herbicides then come in at a $1.2 million price tag and sell you the aeration devices you need to get rid of the blue-green algae. It destroys the fishing habitat, it kills the fish. The reason why they can only do 40% at a time is because of the number of fish that will die. And that's why Fish and Wildlife won't let them treat it in a broader scale. The vegetation becomes so poisoned and it just rises up from the bottom. You can look at a video from Massachusetts where they did this last year, and it kills it at the roots and brings it up, and it drags the muck up to the top where it just sits on top of the water level in these like mucky hillocks and creates a swampy environment.
I'm just going to stop it because it's not a balanced discussion, and I don't disagree with anything, but then again, there's two sides to every story. So did that answer your question, I guess? Thank you. Any more discussion? And I appreciate everybody coming out and educating, continuing to educate us all.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
for
Yep.
keeping me posted.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, yeah.
Thanks.
Next item.
So the fire EMS, this was just sort of a brief
All right,
discussion,
yeah, so
taking
we'll
another look at their
go
board.
to fire department.
Yep.
Come on up.
Sure.
Do you want me to sort of go over our plan of action here?
Sure.
Okay.
You wanna do that?
When they sit down, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there a due date? I'm guessing as soon as possible to get back to you on the Energy Committee detailed budget, but is there a specific date?
11 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, I think that original date you just said, the as soon as possible, was,
I will
Thank
try
you.
to get
great. Thank you so much, Laura.
So Renee and I talked about this budget because it's sort of a moving target, I guess. We have this, ambulance piece that's sort of sitting there. So our thought, and we'll talk to the board here, really for the first time on this, is to let's talk about the budget the way it is now, today, and next time we meet, which is next week,
Yeah.
we're talking about having a bigger discussion about what's the ambulance, and having an hour and a half, whatever it takes, open discussion about another piece that sort of says it's the ambulance piece, and do we incorporate that into the budget or not? And we'll have the public discussion and have some of our people that we've talked to and anybody who wants to come and weigh in one way or the other. I imagine it will be upstairs. So right now the thought is let's talk about just the fire budget, the way it's presented, and then we'll talk about an ambulance option, call it an option, and then the board can based on that discussion, can do a number of things. We could do nothing. We could decide to incorporate it into the budget we present to the town. We could decide to make it a separate warned item, additional item. And then we'd have both potential budgets. One we're presenting to the town that we're talking about tonight with any changes we decide to make, and one with the added moving forward with an ambulance, or not.
Can I say one thing? So this budget that we're looking at right now does not include anything with regard to ambulance transport service, whether we provide it or we contract out. So that figure is not included in here. That's what we'll be discussing next week. We're still waiting for a proposal from Charlotte. And then next week we would be inviting Charlotte, Richmond. We'd have our own proposal and the person who put that together, as well as inviting some of the other, the department would also be there, as well as your other professional peers within Chittenden County that would like to come, and probably someone from St. Mike's, a couple people, and just to be able to, so that you guys aren't answering the questions, or I'm not answering the questions. It's actually the professionals that are in this field that are answering the questions. And
Well, we might be asking questions.
You can ask questions, yeah, so you guys will be able to ask the questions. No, I won't be answering them. It'll be someone else. Thank you.
But Renee, this budget does have the additional full-time
It has,
person
yes.
that we need regardless of whether we have an ambulance or not.
That's not tied to the ambulance.
Yeah,
That's
good. Just
a
wanted to be
need
clear on that.
The department is highlighted.
You described it as what we need. I guess it's what does the board decide to put in the budget?
Yeah.
I mean, in my opinion, I had said, I think it's time we need this. But, as a board, we haven't decided that. I don't think, maybe we did, but.
Well, I could reword that. What the fire department says is essential.
Right.
So I have that line as in fire EMS coordinator right here. I included 50,000 increase, so that would be, added to the salary. What isn't included is any benefits that would go with that. So the benefits are not within the department budgets, but they are, separate. So if we decide to do this, then I would add that. I would add something in for the health, dental, vision, and retirement.
Is that the same with the highway salary I see in there,
Yes.
the additional person? So
Yeah.
that's the salary, not
That's the
the
salary.
benefits.
It's not.
So the highway
benefits.
person, you hadn't put that in the health insurance
No,
either?
not until you
Okay.
guys decide which
Okay,
way you're
good,
doing,
good,
then
good.
I will add.
Yep. All right.
Yeah.
So we have that budget in front of us. There's a couple of things that have increased. I think vehicle maintenance and
Definitely.
yeah,
It's vehicle maintenance and then the building
The
maintenance,
building
pretty
maintenance.
much.
right.
Pretty much the big changes, so.
And so I did email Al, about the station repair line. And so you can
Right.
speak to that a little
Which,
bit
yeah.
too.
Because of our little email issue we got going on.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
I did print these out. This is the poly estimates. Should be plenty here for everybody. Once we get the email straightened out, I'll send it out electronically so you can see it. And
This is
it's
for the
basically,
vehicle. I mean
Good
the
enough.
facility.
Yeah, that's
Is
the
that
building.
same as that?
yeah,
They're the same, right?
They're all the same.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah, they're all the same.
You guys have one?
Yeah.
Aaron wants to.
Right.
He's got
You
it.
can have to. Yeah, I mean, it's just trying to make sure we start maintaining the building so we don't end up like the old highway garage did with no maintenance and then it,
Or the police department.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So, and it's kind of there are some critical things like right now when you're in the meeting room, you can look at either side door and look outdoors. So, I mean, there are some critical things, really, the front doors, ceilings coming down, so there's, this estimate that they did, they went through with David, and basically it wasn't making anything extravagant. It's trying to get it back to where it was, say, 20 years ago. I guess is maybe the best way to describe it, to make sure that it's maintained. Over the years, the association, replaced the roof when we did the addition in '99. We got fundraising done, and $60,000, we put the addition on the back and the new roof on the building. Previous to that, we had done the vinyl siding, we put the FRB on the inside of the fire station walls, because it was the old paneling, and, you know, we've done a lot, the association's done a lot of maintenance over the years, and really, you know, a lot of what you see in the, you know, in the previous years was really super basic maintenance.
Just basic maintenance.
Just
And
barely,
this is
just
more-
barely maintenance.
This is more repair and,
Right, yeah,
and
yeah,
I'll say
absolutely.
upgrade a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, there's really not an upgrade.
Yeah,
Well,
there's
the
no
only-
really no upgrades.
Right, yeah, it's just getting it back.
It's pretty detailed, but it's not, it's taking the windows out that are, can't open. It's, replacing the doors that you can see through. It's, painting the ceiling, painting the meeting room that hasn't been painted since '99. It's, the bathroom off from the, gear room that I won't use. And I'll use pretty anything, but,
I mean, I see a heat pump.
and it just keeps adding,
Yeah.
And this is not, there's no figures in here for potential of rot that you're gonna find behind these walls when we open them up, because I'm pretty sure there's gonna be some, so.
Yeah, and I heard you earlier mention what, you know, about the solar panels on the roof. I had asked, I've had 2 different companies look at it, and they won't
Yeah.
put them on it,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
It's just structurally not. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because that's, so, as part of the many things that we've looked at, you know, when we've looked at trying to do an addition on there, it's, the roof won't support even the additional roof on it, so they wouldn't support even the solar panels.
Yeah.
So, you know, so that, you know, the, unfortunately, because I really wanted to put them on it,
Yeah.
so, but we, you know, because of that, we weren't able to, but, you know, the heat pump, so in the summertime, there is, you know, there's no, we use wall-hung air conditioners.
And this will be a little more efficient.
We're
Yeah.
trying to, we're
Yeah.
trying to do a better job at being more efficient. I mean, you know, we're gonna use, I've been working on an LED light grant. Winooski Fire Department actually got a grant. There's money available, so it didn't cost them anything to switch over, I guess is the way to put it. So I've been trying to track that one down so we can change over. And we've changed some of the bulbs. I mean, we're not changing the ballast. We're not doing it the right way, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
we're
I mean,
changing it.
so I support this, and I don't want to drag it down, but
Okay.
I mean, it
That's
would be
fine.
good. Maybe the Energy Committee comes there
Right.
first,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
and you know, may have
Right.
not to spend necessarily more money, but
Right.
to make
Yeah.
sure it sort of fits in with
Right, yeah.
something.
And we did have a Efficiency Vermont 4 years ago, maybe, I don't even remember when it was. And they didn't even want to approach the building because we didn't occupy it enough time.
Okay.
Enough of the time, because we were trying to do the
Yeah,
lights
yeah,
and
yeah.
make the conversions and all that, and they
at
weren't.
that point,
At that point, we didn't.
payback, according
Right,
to them.
payback wasn't there, and they really didn't even want to look at it, unfortunately, because I was kind of hoping they would, but. And I think that's vehicle maintenance, I mean, we've talked about that. It's.
You
it's
don't know
for-
that it'll be that much, but you're suspecting
Well,
it will be.
we're,
Yeah.
so Med 100 now, we've spent $7,000 already this year on it, so. Engine 3 was 11,000 last year, and we've put money into that again this year. And that is the one in the capital that, you know, we're trying to, haven't really had a chance to work with you guys yet about trying to figure out how to jump that thing ahead a year.
Right.
You know, maybe we could do something like the police do, you know.
The lease.
Get it in hand, well, yeah, and our leases, you know, the
Yeah.
21 budget will pay off engine 1.
Yeah.
So maybe we can do something like they do with the police cars, where they get it in hand, but really don't pay till the next year. But, you know, the truck, engine 3 has some value, which we could put towards it, and then that would actually shorten up the, you know, the 3-year lease that we actually have in the capital plan, to try to shorten things up depending upon a whole lot of things that happen. So we, you know, want to try to get jumped ahead, plus the cost. I mean, that truck has cost us a lot of money, and it's the prime truck. you know, it's a truck that goes out first on everything because it's four-wheel drive,
And
small.
up the big hills.
And up the big hills and, yeah. And, you know, doesn't have a lot of miles on it, but none of them do, but, you know, they're driven hard.
So what's the board, got questions? I mean, we've got the, you know, the additional person in there, and they're described what their duties would be and how they would fill in the entire fire and rescue
So far this
operation.
fiscal year, we've missed 3 EMS calls now, so, which we've never missed EMS calls. Unfortunately.
And this, the 50,000 number here would eliminate missing those calls? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's the ones are missing their daytime. Yeah, ones are missing their daytimes.
So what would that work week look like? 6 o'clock in the morning till?
It probably would, well, it probably would be more of an 7 o'clock to 3 kind of thing. We'd have to adjust it by the times that we can, because we can pull up all the times when all the accidents and medical calls occur. And it probably would shift later in the morning, because surprisingly, it's more afternoon is where we get that influx of calls. So we've shifted more to the back end of the day versus the front end of the day, I guess is the way to describe it, so.
Well, I think
Yeah.
one of the other things, Tom, is that early mornings, people are more, I'm around more. It's as the day gets later, I go out and do something, that's when I'm not around. And Al's not around, and Frank's not around, and, you know, that's when we're missing those calls is, you know,
Mid-morning.
6 o'clock in the morning, I'm sitting there having coffee.
Sleeping late.
Yeah.
Like a retired guy.
Yeah, so, you know, it's at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock after I gotta go do some errands, or I'm going to work, somebody's doing something that we're not available.
It's kind of a safety valve.
Yeah, more of that, you know, 8
The rest of us start coming back from work.
8 to 4 or
Get
something
back in
like
town.
that would be my,
Yeah.
So, it's just clarification for me. So I know there's the fire station repair, right, the 14,000?
Right, yeah.
So this bid is, if I'm reading it right, 262,000.
correct.
Correct, right, to bring
So-
it up to.
It's just to show what the total amount of work is, but
Right.
We'll start with
We're gonna start picking the
14,000
worst things
work.
off.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, we'll start picking the worst things off. And,
okay.
yeah. We're a long ways from there, but try to abate some of those things that are.
Make some progress.
Make some progress. Not lose ground. How's that?
And there may be some things that increase the efficiency just a little bit,
absolutely.
and, you know, help pay for
I
it.
mean, you can get in the door so you can't see out.
Yeah,
So.
that would help.
Aside from this building, it's probably the building that gets the most amount of people in use in this
Yeah.
whole town, aside from the schools.
Yeah, and the thing is, with the
Municipal
more calls we
buildings.
get, you know, the more use it's getting too, so it,
Yeah.
You know, we're
Yeah, so the
200
amount of
and-
use in the last 10 years has increased
Oh,
a
huge.
percentage.
Oh, yeah, huge. Yeah, just on calls, but, you know, just doing a lot of other things in the building too. And so since July 1st, we're at 262 calls since July 1st. So we're gonna be up there, so.
Speaking of, I meant to bring back your radio.
Yeah, I've got some more coming.
Keeps going up.
It keeps going up, yeah. Yeah, I'm waiting for batteries for them so I can actually give
The
all
batteries
of you
do
a ranger.
die.
Yeah.
They can't charge anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you
I'm
all
happy
can
to stick
hear
it
what
in
it is.
that
And
charger.
you know, it's important to understand that too. I mean, it's, you know, it impacts his budget huge.
Well, you know, by having that thing and listening to go off, it's a visceral sort of thing. You know, it's like somebody's getting up. I'm eating dinner. Somebody's getting up. You know, and so it's a good experience for
Make
For
sure everybody's
everyone.
why you're not on the fire department.
Makes
Not
this
good
look like a
marketing.
cakewalk.
Yep. Yeah, and we've tried to be pretty conservative on that budget, and we have, I think the last 2 years, maybe, or 3 years, we were tried to level fund it, but,
That's right. Last 2
you know,
years it was level.
it's kinda, again, we weren't doing a good thing by doing that, I guess is what I would say. You know, we should have been adding more in for the building, and but that's all bridge over the thing.
Well, I mean, I think, I really appreciate the estimate. That's very handy to see exactly what you're looking at doing. The advantage to this type of format is we see you guys out. I see David out all the time, all of you guys really. And, you know, I can get behind that one position as hard as it is to swallow. I think it's probably, we're to that point. Yeah, I mean, some of it's hard to take, but it's necessary.
Well, it's hard to take for me.
Yeah.
I mean, really, because, you know, if you'd asked me 5 years ago, you know, it was like 15 years ahead, we're gonna need the person. You know, it wasn't this way. I mean, you know, and it's been the last 2 years I started saying, "Damn, you know, guys, I think we're gonna need somebody." You know, and it, you know, we're gonna need, you know, if the development comes like it might, you know, it won't be the end of needing people, you know. But, and then development will also help pay for it. So, I mean, it's a, you know.
And looking at that truck that you mentioned, engine 3 or whichever one.
Yeah, it is.
I think the
Yeah.
plan that we have in place is what I would prefer. Get the most recent one paid off and then basically continue that same
Right.
payment
Yeah,
on
I
to the
think
next
that's a
one.
good
So
one.
it's
And
not
that's why we
huge.
worked, you know, I worked a lot trying to figure that one out to,
Well,
you know,
you adjusted
because of
it
the
a couple of
conversation
years
is-
ago. Yeah, yeah.
You know, because of the conversation, is, you know, we don't want to see that up and down and up and
Yeah.
down. Try to get that flat, so everybody, you know, it's predictable, which I think we, you know, last year was 18 years predictable, you know, so.
So it sounds like the board is supporting this position. We should probably put the benefit package
Yeah.
in there so we
Yeah.
see the full cost.
And Mike,
And, go ahead.
you can finish it up.
And so, you know, obviously the taxpayers are gonna be the ones voting. And so I look at you guys, and I guess I could have said the same thing for Mike too. You know, over the next couple of years, you guys should start thinking about transitioning leadership. Not that you're not doing a good job, you are, but you can't do it
Believe me,
forever.
I've been thinking a lot
And
about
so,
it lately.
yeah, so that, you know, it's, and that's true for everywhere, through the town, everywhere. We don't tend to do
Planning
that.
model that the state has.
Yeah.
Right, continuation of operation.
Right, right. So, it sort of goes along with it. You're bringing in a full-time person.
Yep.
Potentially more, you know, more activity in the future. And so you really have to have that continued
Gotta
strong
transition.
leadership.
We
Yeah,
gotta transition, so,
through that.
yeah.
So aside from the additional person, you go through all these items. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but like none of these are controllable in terms of us.
Pretty much not.
Yeah, like
It's pretty much
it costs to doing
what
business
happened.
stuff. Yeah.
I mean, we're looking at what happened, I guess, really.
Maintenance costs, right? You know, equipment costs, you know, supplies cost, you know, this kind of thing. How is it that heating fuel goes down 3,000? Is it because
Is
did we
that the
change?
utility
So
one we
that
combined?
was the combined,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
So it just absorbed
Yeah.
elsewhere, okay.
Yep, so missing,
Combined.
including it in one line, which
Got
makes
it.
sense.
Couple
And so we
three line
just,
items got combined
And you
into
guys
one.
put a new furnace in
Yep,
a
yeah,
couple of
NTI
years ago.
boiler, yeah,
Yeah,
it
yeah.
works great, yep. Ours works
Got one of those
and it's simple. And it's simple.
And it's locked, so nobody can play with it.
Still don't have any engineers in it.
Yep, we didn't have any involved.
So really, the only thing that I see to talk about here, because everything else is the cost of doing business, assuming we're still gonna be doing business, is whether or not we're gonna have this person. That's really all I'm seeing here. And, yeah, if you're looking at 500 calls by the end of the fiscal year, you know, coming over that pager, you know, Dave can only do 400 a day, you know, so that leaves us out 100.
Right. Those are the 100 that are at night.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I don't do
Yeah.
that at night.
Yeah, and I'm not sure
So
which.
part
yeah.
part of it is not that I'm saying it should be more, but is 50,000 really? It seems low to me.
For which, the salary line?
Yeah.
It doesn't include the benefits.
It doesn't include the benefits, so
But
that's
still,
just straight, yeah, I mean, you know, it's.
talking about-
We forget, well,
I-
originally 1905 or something.
Now,
Yeah,
Yeah,
And I assume you got that, some going rate thing, you just pull that out of your.
around the county.
Yeah.
I think,
got the county
what's
averages.
his name had
I was
sort
in
of said
22,
that was
yeah.
a reasonable.
he said it was a range,
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah, the
Person.
the AEMT
EMT.
firefighters.
Yeah.
Zeke has 22 and
Yeah,
change,
so,
And, you know, and the other thing is too, that, you know, there's gonna be some offsetting in this from the call pay.
Yeah.
So, you know, because there'll be potentially less people going, so that it's gonna offset itself.
That's that
Or any
$52,000
increase may
number.
not go as fast.
Correct, yeah.
If we get more
Right,
calls,
and then,
right, it may-
which I'm trying to think,
Does offset a little bit.
does the hourly wage go up again mandatory?
Yeah.
It just went up
But-
to 1078, and it'll
Yeah.
probably go up again the
Yeah.
first of the year.
But, I mean, it's gonna balance out, I guess is, you know, it may not
Dave
be as
again is
bad.
gonna be making less money every year.
Well, and it's true. I mean, if I'm sitting there listening, I'm up in the woods and I hear something and I know it's,
Somebody's going.
you know,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm not gonna call. I'm over that, having to go to every call. I don't, I can sit home and listen to it and move on to bed.
All right, so it sounds like, you know, we're looking good and the board basically supports this. So again, next week, it's our hope, and we talk about starting earlier,
yes,
and we'll make it a public meeting to talk about the ambulance service. We'll have the numbers so everybody understands it, everybody can ask questions. You know, obviously you guys could bring a whole pile of people to support it, which is fine, but I'd like to have a sort of balanced
Right.
discussion and just let everybody
guess-
get as much
right.
information as they can.
Right, and I would like to offer up a caution. And that is, I have a big fear that by having the other services there, questions are gonna be asked that are going to sour our relationship with those other departments.
You mean outside departments?
Yeah.
Like
Schwab-
St. Mike's or
Schwab-
somebody?
Shelburne.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Richmond, yeah. Because it's, you know, we have a tenuous relationship anyways. And we've talked about that some today, and it, you know, try not to make it that, I guess is the way to put it. I mean, we don't know what to do. You know, because if we show up and ask questions that need to be asked,
Yeah, okay,
it's
fair enough.
gonna
Yeah,
cause
well, but, you know, maybe Renee would
frictions.
know which questions that we should ask.
Well, I know Zeke has a big list. Is he giving you that list?
he hasn't given me a
Okay,
list,
I'll talk to him tomorrow.
yeah,
You know, and I don't wanna make hard things harder. I guess
Right.
is the way I wanna put
Right.
it.
I mean, I'd like to
Yeah.
have an opportunity for people just to
Oh,
ask
absolutely.
questions and,
Absolutely. Yeah.
you know, get as much
Yep.
information as we can. And
Yep.
obviously, things will be said where people say, I don't know if I really believe that, or
Which
I
is
don't, but,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, that's
we'll
fine.
get the information, and you've got the board here that
Yep.
needs all that
Oh,
information too.
absolutely. Yep.
So,
Yeah, and I think, you know, certainly Zeke will do a good job, and, I mean, he's done a good job, and, you know, it's pretty
and he
well.
pays taxes.
Absolutely, and he pays taxes, so.
Is
Yeah.
a 6 o'clock start time feasible for people or not?
Next Wednesday. I'm able to, but you know, it's up to them.
Right. Just wanna, because we have more budget stuff to do in addition to this, I wanna
Right.
make sure we allow plenty of time for this discussion, but then time to.
So is that 6 to midnight? Is that?
No, it's not.
Midnight Thursday.
No, we have to work through it. That was already gonna be late at
The
7.
15th.
so-
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way I can do 6.
No way. Okay.
6:30?
6 AM?
6:30. Cutting it close. I guess 6:30 is more doable for sure than.
But Aaron, you're saying you're.
Well, you were gonna be.
I was already gonna be like 7:30 before I was showing up
Okay.
anyway, but like, I can, let me hold off on that. Let me see if I can work through that.
Okay.
I mean, we could.
I mean, don't,
You know,
don't make changes.
Right, right. So if you can't make it, I mean, we'll be able to broadcast it, right, or not?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
it'll be
think so.
recorded, hopefully.
But there's a chance that I can work that out.
Okay,
And
Jeff?
this is the 15th?
next
The
week.
15th,
Yeah, we
are
from today.
I'm free enough that if I
All
block
right,
now, I should
and
be able
Marilee?
Yeah, I'm fine.
So we'll shoot for 6:30,
Okay.
start, and we'll, you know, block up to 2 hours, really. I mean, hopefully we'll, you know, I'll work hard to just get through the
We'll be
information,
quiet.
and then we'll have to deliberate a little bit about what we heard. And, you know, it'd be great if afterwards the board could deliberate and, you know, sort of to make some decisions, but at least get all the information out there.
Thank you.
Okay,
Any questions, let me know.
yeah.
What are your top
I'd
couple
like
of things on this?
Uh,
What are your top couple of items, just out of curiosity?
Doors, definitely, we gotta get the
Doors.
doors fixed. Yeah, that's prime, and then, I don't know, let that up to him.
Yeah,
Some of the
doors
ceiling
first.
repairs probably, so it
Ceilings.
doesn't keep falling down.
And I don't know what we're gonna do about that, that's a massive job. The windows need to be done.
Okay.
I mean, it'd be nice to paint the meeting room so at least looks decent. It's, you know, it's, what?
Yeah, no, I'm
20
just
years
curious. I
old,
mean,
whatever,
like
and
I-
it
Yeah.
just,
We'll sit down
So
Bottom
potentially on your roof,
and, right,
you could look at thin film, which is
right,
what Marilee has on her house.
yep,
And there's really no weight to it.
right,
They're not as efficient,
right.
but they've been getting more and more efficient like everything
Yep.
else.
Yeah.
And there's so much surface
We
area
got a lot of
there
roof.
that
It's all
that's a
faces south.
possibility.
yeah, we've got to have that looked at, 'cause that's just a corrugated
Yeah,
roof
right,
with
yeah,
screwed down
yeah.
and the screws are
Right,
coming loose,
right,
that's
okay.
another,
That's in the
another
list.
whole
Yeah, that's
thing
on
on
the
there.
list.
The
Yeah.
siding is, you know, this far up on the outside, the siding is all,
Okay, well,
yeah, I can go on.
yeah, all right. All right, thank you very much.
Phil, quick stretch break.
Oh, yeah, okay, so it's 9:30, we'll go for 9:27, we'll go to 9:35.
So we agreed. It's 6:30.
Ken, we're good?
Okay.
All right, we're back. We're halfway through the numbers, but more than halfway through the meeting, I think. Next item, 7. Oh, we did want to talk about wastewater. We're planning to have this as a bond vote. We haven't heard from the survey.
We got our numbers.
All right.
Well,
Yes.
we got
wait a
the
minute.
number
We got enough for it to be
surveys.
read.
Right, they may not
Don't
all
know.
meet the requirements yet.
Well, no, he has enough surveys in which to read them, whether we
Qualify.
Qualify for the median
qualify
household
Okay,
based
income.
on
but that's all right. I
household
mean,
income.
we got through, I hate to have
Yes,
not
yes.
have at least had a running shot. So, we still hope to reach out to, some of the legislators who are now in session, because really the only opportunity of additional funds besides the, agricultural, USDA, and the Clean Water Act, and they're gonna offset each other in a way. I mean, we don't know what the numbers would be, but if we got some USDA, it would reduce this a little bit, but be better. So there's a amount there, and then potentially capital appropriations committee could take some of that capital money and, hey, give some to Hinesburg, right?
That's
Yeah.
what we want people to be advocating with the legislators
So-
for, and anyone can be sending in emails and, about Hinesburg's situation. So it's front and center in their
Yeah.
minds when they're appropriating these funds, because they could appropriate funds to Hinesburg
But
for this
they're not
purpose.
inclined to do that, from what I understand, because it's a real inefficient use of that
Well-
money.
Well, but that's not necessarily how politics work, right? If we were only to spend on efficient things, then the budget wouldn't look like it does.
Wouldn't be called politics.
Right, so that's where we stand there, but we can expect, we'll wanna move that forward, and we'll need to have a public, we'll define exactly when the public hearing will need to be.
So I've got to put a notice of intent to file the application and a warning in the paper. There's got to be a public hearing. And so I'm working with the USDA right now and our bond counsel just to know if that public hearing, the one for the USDA funding, can be just as part of our select board meeting. For the bond counsel, for our going to the bond vote, I've got all of the documents. I've been working with the bond counsel on that, so we have that just about ready to go, as well as the warning and the vote, the Australian ballot piece for that. But that also will need a public hearing within 10 days of the vote, of the March 3rd vote, Australian ballot. So we'll have to have one of our select board meetings 10 days prior to that and have a public hearing about it. We can have multiple hearings in February about the bond vote as we're leading up, and so that people can have their
It would be
questions
good
answered.
to
Yes,
provide
we definitely
education.
want to
So
do
I-
that, but we're required to do.
Right. So I think the expectation is we got a busy January, and we'll roll into February.
Yeah.
Yeah, with some public hearings. And then I think in the beginning of February, we'll also sort of try to finish up the town map and zoning too, that we thought we could do that in February maybe.
Yes, yeah.
We don't think that one should not be that big of a deal. I think most everybody's feeling okay with where it is now, but we'll see. All right? Next item is the submission of hazard mitigation assistance funding grant.
So this is,
Can I just,
Yeah.
we didn't look at the Community Resource Center.
Okay.
yes, I was going to tell, just to give a little update. So, as you know, they are breaking out of the agency request. So now they're, instead of the 12 or 13,000 that used to go through the agency request, their full ask now is 25,000. I did, as I went back to all the departments, let's, see if we can go through our budgets. I did go back to them too and say, is this a hard, fast number? Is this absolutely what you need to provide the services that you do? So they said the only thing that they can do, they do need that amount, but they can explore some other fundraising options. But they need to go back to their board and discuss that, and then they could, talk about it. But that full amount is what they need to do for the cost of doing their business and providing the services to the community. But they will, they understand that we're in a tight budget, and so they will look at some other fundraising opportunities, and they'll report back to me after their meeting to see if they think that's reasonable, or, and so I'll report back to you next week, or they'll come next week.
So I did have a question on that.
Yeah.
Sure you've got it, but so it says they were previously included the 13,000 last year under an agency request.
Agency request review committee.
And now it's a $25,000 line item because they're in the budget. So
Right.
is that truly a full 25,000 net new,
No,
or is
no.
it the difference?
So I asked the agency request review committee to deduct that from what they were giving this year.
Okay, so it's reflected over there,
It's
the
only a
down
new
and the up.
12,000
Okay, so we're not
increase.
double
It's
layer.
not.
You get what
Nope,
I'm saying?
Nope,
Yep.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yep.
good point. All right. All right, let's keep going. So thank you, Joy.
Yeah.
Hazard mitigation assistance funding grant, can you explain?
Yeah, so this is just the multi-jurisdictional hazard mitigation plan. So rather than doing it town by town, they do Chittenden County multi-jurisdictional. And so what they're offering is to apply for this grant that will hire someone, hire consultants to put together the plans. Our plans don't expire until 2022. But it takes a while to get this process going, and you need to get FEMA and all the pieces together, and there's a lot of steps involved in creating these plans. So they want to get the application in now and to be able to start that process. So I just the towns need to do a 25% match, which would be $2,000 that we would apply to that. So I would need to have you guys do a motion for either me to sign this to say that we will commit to that $2,000 for the hazard mitigation assistance grant.
All right, so
update.
This is not related to the Halloween storm funds that we're hoping for.
No, this is just.
Too bad.
Yeah, right.
I'll make a motion to authorize Renee to sign the 25% match certification for the hazard mitigation assistance application funding certification.
Second.
Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. You said aye, right? Yep. All right.
All right.
Town administration report.
All right, so a lot of time again on the budget. We did have someone come over the holidays and paint the stairwell. So the stairwell is now painted. That was a tricky one. Needed someone who actually had the equipment, and so
Good.
that's taken care of. As I mentioned, the Energy Committee is reaching out to having different solar companies kind of do proposals on all the town buildings just to see what the cost would be and what that return could be.
And in the conflict of interest, since we've been talking about that, they are coming to All Earth Renewables, the company I work for.
Okay.
And I got invited to a meeting while I was away, and then I went and talked today to the guy who said it. And I go, what is this? And he said, so-and-so. And I said, are they on the Energy Committee? And he said, yes. So I will sit in on that meeting, but I won't, advocate one way or the other. But I may ask some questions like, have you thought about this or have you thought about that, as they look at buildings and things to, what potential solar projects there might be.
So I'm confused about why that's a conflict of interest. Are you personally hiring them for All Earth Renewables?
They could utilize All Earth Renewables to do work.
Oh, I see.
So I would not be involved in that.
So if we hired them, it might benefit your business.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
But so I would just sit in on it, and if I know of something like, well, that's not going to fly, then I might say that.
Mm-hmm. But you'll have to sit out in the audience.
Yes. And if it comes here, obviously I would have to recuse myself. So. Yep.
So, as Joyce said, we've got the number of surveys that they needed. Now we're just waiting to find out if we actually, the median household income meets the criteria that needs to be met in order for the USDA funding. Doing a lot of work with Wayne Elliott, just getting all the, so we did, we put in the application, but then there's a lot of supporting documents that have to be uploaded as well. And so we're working on those pieces, meeting with the auditors. Are putting together their draft audit, and so I have a conference call with them tomorrow with some questions. And I think that's about it.
Okay. All right, any questions? No, thanks for your hard work. And next item is Select Board Forum and any correspondence received. So I have a couple things that I'd be glad to kick it off. Let's see. First, I mentioned I met the new police officer. Is it
Oh,
Brett?
yes.
Brett.
Brett.
Brett. Yes.
Brett.
Brett. Very nice.
That's right.
What's Brett's last name?
Lindemoot.
Okay.
And I think he must live in Huntington now.
He lives in
Yeah.
Huntington,
Yeah.
yes.
Then two other things. I guess it's okay to say Mike Bissonette because he put it in Front Porch Forum. Raised the issue about conflict of interest and the article in the Citizen and a quote from me, which I think the Citizen had pretty accurately put for most of it anyways. The Citizen contacted me about, this conflict of interest and, get a little more information. I said, well, we did have a policy, and I said, it's come up a few times on the select board, and I think I may have said, I've sat out a couple times, but it's not really been that big of a deal. And I said, I think the only time I've ever raised it was with Mike, as he was the chair at one time. And then Mike said, no, I don't think so, that it's not a conflict of interest, and that was the end of it. Nothing ever happened about it, and I wasn't upset. I just raised it. I think Mike wanted to point out that when that was raised at one of our meetings, there was a lot of heated discussion about the funding on Bissonette at that time. It was several meetings afterwards where we actually voted for it, and he wasn't actually on the select board at that point. Mm-hmm. That's when you had come on. Mm-hmm. And so clarification appropriate that, he didn't actually vote on it.
But I do remember a meeting, I wasn't on the select board, I was watching, and I think it was Haystack Crossing that was being discussed, and he went out and sat in the audience.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So that wasn't this one. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I think the point being is I did raise a question once, and this is a case where, it wasn't agreed, and fine, so off we went. That's fine. So, but Mike wanted to make a point that he didn't actually, it wasn't at a meeting where there was an actual vote. So, I agree. I don't think the article was wrong on it, but it does clarify that a little bit.
Just to clarify, I did go back and read an old story that had been in the Citizen that recounted that discussion.
Oh, interesting.
And where he said that he didn't have any, because that stuff right there came from that other article.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, so it's already been out there. Yeah, okay. I just bring it up because it did go to Front Porch Forum. I got an email. I'm assuming everybody else got the email, maybe not. No? So I got an email from Mike, and then it was something, and I did respond to him via email, but it was in Front Porch Forum, so
I read it
that
in Front Porch Forum.
brings it up. And then there was another comment in Front Porch Forum about maybe a particular night, one of the roads wasn't very well cleared off. Fine, I mean, that's what Front Porch Forum's about. But, I point out that the roads will never be perfectly maintained and clear of snow on every single day and every single evening. And in my opinion, the expectation that we'll be able to maintain roads as well as we do now, or even better, is probably not going to be true as we move into the future, as the cost of doing those things get more and more. It isn't going to get less expensive. There's no technology other than driving big trucks, spreading expensive and more expensive sand and salt, using fossil fuels. That's going to get more expensive. This is my opinion. So I think our expectations need to be reasonable.
Well, it's important to understand that we don't have shifts of staff. It's not a 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week service. We have currently 3. There's 4 positions, but there's 3 people that are covering all of the roads in Hinesburg. And so they do have to sleep in between, but they're out at 3 a.m. checking in roads, and they're out late at night, so.
Today.
Yeah. Yep, I think he probably just came here from his truck when he was here earlier.
So.
And just another comment on Front Porch Forum. Everybody in the town staff has a phone number. Rather than spread it around on Front Porch Forum, just pick up the phone and call either Renee, Joy, or the department
one of
head.
us.
If you have a concern, or one of us. I had one the other day. That, there's just no need to broadcast complaints to everybody unless you have an answer. It's just, the people work hard. It's kind of insulting.
Yeah. Unfortunately, in this case, you could read it that way.
Right.
But,
everybody just contact people directly. If you don't
Yeah.
get traction, then it's a different story. But at least reach out personally first. It's just a good policy.
Okay. And I'm sure Mike saw it, and I'm sure he, took it to heart.
Exactly.
Any other select board forum items anybody wants to bring up? All right. Minutes we'll go with 2-4. First of all, I'd like to say, particularly 2-4.
12-4.
12-4, sorry. Well done. That was a long one, and I forgot how much fun that meeting was. And I thought you did an excellent job. Thank you, Val, for capturing basically everything in a reasonable way. I had one really minor thing on page 3, the second paragraph that starts with Andrea, the third line down there, to the town, and she feels that is still the intention with state. I think maybe with the state or something that just read kind of funny. But after reading this, and I enjoyed reading it and reliving it, I don't know if anybody else had comments. Yeah?
There were a couple places, and I agree, Phil. Kudos to Val. This was a long meeting and very involved. But there were a few things where I really wasn't clear on what was being said. So on page 2, the paragraph that starts with John Little, he then noted of the 2.2 acres, noted the Planning Commission feels there is a wetland issue reducing building option, and the better question might be how much of official map item 34 is buildable space, and how that would compare to the 4,500 square foot. That was too long a sentence for me to understand what was being said.
So you're just asking Val to take a look at it and...
Yeah, I
If you think it can
don't,
be
because I don't really understand.
I'll go back and watch the VCAM and see if I can't get a better understanding of what he was getting at and reword it a little.
Yeah, maybe it could be 2 sentences. Okay, there were a few others. Oh, this is very minor on page 3, the paragraph that starts with me. Marilee said she just put an S after likes.
Okay.
Let's see, Tom said he would like the board to make the change he went on to address. Okay, and on the last paragraph on page 3, Tom said he would like the board to make the change and get it warned again as soon as possible. He went on to address the question Aaron raised of being 2, that needs 2 O's. Yeah. Too specific, using feature 34 as an example. Is each item listed required, or can a certain number of those listed be acceptable? It would be easier for me if that was a sentence on its own. Is each item listed required, or can a certain number be acceptable? And I've got something on page 4 also. Maybe. No, that was not a question. That was just a clarification from me.
Okay, are there any more?
That's it. for me.
corrections for 12-4.
Yeah, whereas actually, if you go to that page, where, consider approving the FY19 delinquent tax warrant.
What page number?
That's a good question. 4. It says.
Oh, yeah.
Phi. I think it might have wanted to say Phil. You see that?
The
Phil?
consider
Phil moved
CVOE.
to approve the
On
FY19 delinquent tax warrant.
Oh, I see it, yep. I moved, yeah.
Heck, I didn't see that.
Your new name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Freiberg, I think I heard somebody say.
How late it gets.
Oh.
Yeah, Fiverr, yeah, that's true. That's if you're mayor.
Philburg, yeah, it's your town, it's
Philburg.
Philburg.
Well, in this case, it would be Fiverr.
Yeah. Did we already make a motion?
No.
All right,
No.
so I make a motion to accept the December 4th minutes with corrections as noted.
Second.
All right, any more discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, so that got approved. I'd make a motion to accept the December 18th minutes with any corrections that are noted.
Second.
And I have one comment, which I want to just say I appreciate. On the first page, under capital review, you have this asterisk action item. I think that's great. I mean, and you know, we could do more of that. I think, you know, I think we got to go. I think this is an action item. And so
Yeah.
we get some agreement that it is. In this
Yep.
case, it certainly was. I think we got one,
Yep.
we, Renee, but we, to look at putting together a packet, right?
Yep.
For new board members.
For new board members, yep.
So, that potentially. So I appreciate that. I think that's great. And then the last comment, at the end of that, the last page, the last paragraph, it says Phil moved to adjourn the meeting, and I forgot to put in, it was freaking late. I think I said that.
Well, that was not in the note that was sent to me.
Oh, okay, that's right. Sorry.
I left that out. Yes.
Yeah, it was like
It was
12:30.
edited.
It was 11:30, yeah, it was late.
30 or something.
Did anybody else have any actual comments on
I
that?
couldn't find anything to correct. It
Freaking
was
out.
great.
All right. Great. So, all those in favor of approving December 18th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Do you want to do the warnings? The warrants?
Make a motion to approve the warrants as presented by the town clerk to include payroll.
Second.
That's seconded. And I think now we've got 4 signatures
Yep.
on those.
Yep, I came in.
Yeah. So that's great. Any comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We do not need to go into executive session.
Wow.
So, I don't know. Are there any other motions we could make?
One to adjourn.
I can't accept that unless it's seconded. Okay. Any discussion on that?
Going once.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you.
Right at 10 o'clock.
Not bad.